Well, good morning, commissioners, and good morning, staff, and good morning, everybody who has so far joined us. This is going to be an interesting meeting. I would now like to convene the April 23rd, 24th, 2020 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. I realized when I came into my office, I don't have a gavel, but I have a stapler. So there you go. Will the recording secretary please call roll?
Kathleen Allaby.
They're going to have to unmute.
Yeah, you're going to need to unmute to say here.
Okay, got it. Here.
Kirsten Barnes.
Here.
Catherine Willen Brown.
Here.
C. Michael Cooney.
Unmute.
I'm here.
Marisol de la Torre Escobedo. Anna Marie Francois.
Here.
Makita Gwino Shire.
Present.
Johanna Hotwig.
Here.
Alicia Hine.
Present.
Terry Jackson.
Here.
Bonnie Clapp.
Present.
Cameron Quinn.
Present.
Jane Marks.
Here.
Cynthia Martin.
Present.
Monica Martinez.
Here.
Ade Rodriguez.
Here.
David Simons.
Here.
Tina Sloan.
Here.
Andrew Wall.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Good.
Hi, Ju. Commissioner de la Torre Escobedo just arrived.
Yes, I see her. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Executive Director Sandy, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And it echoes.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, there is still an echo in the commission room, as you can hear. And due to the current COVID-19 crisis, our meeting protocols have been adjusted to work within an online environment, as you know. So we need to take a few minutes to walk through our process before we get to today's agenda. First, this meeting is being conducted via Zoom.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Can you pause for just a moment because we can't hear you?
You can't. Okay.
And Mary, your echoing stopped and we could hear Chairman Sloan.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit of an echo and we could hear Chairman Sloan okay.
And you can hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
We're just waiting for the volume to be turned up. Could you try again, please? Just a test, Madam Chair.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. We'll listen very closely. Thank you.
All right. So I'm assuming I'll just begin again just to be sure that you all did hear that during the current COVID-19 crisis, our meeting protocols have been adjusted to work within this online environment. So we need to take a few minutes to walk through our process before we get to today's agenda. Everything's still okay in the commission room, Executive Director? Okay. And online?
Yes, ma'am.
Thumbs up if you all can hear me? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so first, This meeting is being conducted via Zoom. Staff is maintaining a minimal presence in the commission building, but everyone else is participating from their own locale. This platform makes logistics a little more challenging, and we do ask for everyone's patience. A few things to note. Microphones. We would like you to know that everyone's microphone is muted to eliminate any background noise that may hinder others from hearing what is being said. Commissioners and presenters can unmute yourself, but please mute your microphone after you're done speaking. Zoom identification. We'd like to ask that everyone check their Zoom identification and make sure that it contains your first and last name correctly. This is very important for those who want to make public comment so that we're able to call on you appropriately, and also so that we get all names accurately recorded in the record. Okay. Motions and roll call vote. Commissioners, when making a motion, please state the motion in full. This is needed to ensure that everyone has a clear understanding of the motion. Because this is a teleconference meeting, we also need to conduct each vote by roll call. This is going to take a little time, so please bear with us. Just before the vote, we will remind everyone to make sure you are unmuted so that we don't miss anyone's vote. Public comment. There is a time designated for public comment. If you wish to speak on a specific item, please email your request to comments@ctc.ca.gov, or you can call the following number, 916-322-6253, and these instructions are also located on the agenda. When you do email or call, please indicate which item you wish to speak to so we can make sure to call on you at the appropriate time. Please make sure the request includes your full name, your phone number if participating through phone only, your affiliation, and the agenda number and title. Again, make sure your name that you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. You can find these instructions on the CTC website for this meeting. The meeting host will then call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comment during the public comment period. After you finish your comment, your microphone will be muted by the meeting host. Each of our committee chairs will have the discretion to set a 1-minute time limit on comments depending on the volume of speakers seeking to speak on a particular item. We ask that you keep your remarks brief and focused on the particular item you are speaking to. You will get a 1-minute warning and will be asked to finish your sentence before being muted by the meeting host. A note on recording. Just like in-person meeting, this meeting is being recorded. After the meeting, the archived audio and video will be available via the Commission's website. Okay. So before we start our regular business, I would like to welcome 2 new commissioners, Cynthia Martin and David Simmons. Cindy Martin is deeply committed to creating educational conditions and opportunities that enable all children to become actively literate, contributing and participating members of the democratic society who make a positive difference in the world. Her 25 years as an educator include teaching elementary grades as a classroom teacher and later serving as a school-wide literacy specialist in the Poway Unified School District. After participating in a 7-year improvement effort at a struggling school in Poway, Commissioner Martin served as teacher, instructional leader, and principal for 10 years at Central Elementary School in San Diego Unified School District. At Central Elementary, she worked at attracting and retaining high-quality, dedicated staff. She nurtured innovative programs to support her students and staff, including a highly successful biliteracy program, a hands-on school garden program, quality after-school and preschool programs, employees child daycare center, and a community health and wellness center for students and their families. As the superintendent of San Diego Unified School District, Commissioner Martin leads the district team and community with a singular focus on student success. She is working with the Board of Education to implement Vision 2020, creating quality schools in every neighborhood throughout the district. Ms. Martin earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education from the University of Wisconsin, La Crosse, and master's degree in curriculum and instruction from the University of California, San Diego. Ms. Martin is the school administrator representative on the commission. Welcome, Commissioner Martin. I'll clap for you. We would all clap.
Thank you.
Would you care to make any remarks, Commissioner Martin?
Thank you so much for the welcome this morning. And this is an interesting way to start as a commissioner, but I'm very honored and it's a pleasure for me to be able to serve in this capacity. And I think I'll update my bio because it's more like 30 years in education.
Okay, I thought so.
I was 10 when I started. No. I was a classroom teacher for 17 years, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to serve in this capacity and to work with this great team. And I appreciate the work of the staff that has worked to onboard me. I was able to do an in-person visit to the commission and be able to learn all about the work that you've been doing, and happy to be able to participate and serve.
Thank you so much. We are so pleased you're here.
Thank you.
The next new commissioner, though certainly not new to the commission, he has usually been on the other side of the table. We're happy to have him on our side of the table. He's always been a part of our work for a very long time, David Simmons. He is the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for the Goleta Union School District since 2017. In that capacity, he oversees human resources, data management, medical benefits, and labor relations. Prior to working in Goleta, he served in multiple administrative positions for the Ventura County Office of Education, including Assistant Superintendent of Personnel and Director of Bilingual Teacher Training and Paraeducator to Teacher Programs. His first teaching assignment was as a teacher of middle school mathematics in the Ventura Unified School District. For over 30 years, Mr. Simmons has worked with the CTC to improve and diversify the teaching profession by supporting teachers and expanding pathways into the profession. Over his career, he supervised 9 commission-approved credential programs, including General Educator Teacher Induction, Education Specialist Teacher Induction, Administrative Services Induction, Language and Academic Development, Added Authorizations in Autism Spectrum Disorder, Orthopedic Impairments and Early Childhood Special Education, English Learner Added Authorizations, and Designated Subjects Credentials in Adult Education, Career Technical Education, and Special Subjects. He co-facilitated CTC's General Education Induction Standards panel. He served on CTC's Teacher Preparation Advisory Panel and the Mathematics Teacher Preparation and Assessment Advisory Panel. For several years, he also served as the designated representative to CTC for the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association. And I can't say that as quickly as he used to say it. I'd just like to hear him say it one more time. It's pretty impressive. Mr. Simmons earned a bachelor's degree in mathematics from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and a master's degree in educational administration from the California State University, Northridge. His credentials include a single subject teaching credential in mathematics, a multiple subject teaching credential, and an administrative services credential. Mr. Simmons is the Human Resources Administrator Representative on the Commission. Welcome, Mr. Simmons, and would you like to say a few words? First, we're going to clap for you.
I'd just like to say that I'm very grateful to be here. I was reminiscing with Mary yesterday that my first commission meeting that I went to was in 1992, and I believe it was Mary's 3rd day on the job. So she has a longer tenure with the commission than I do, but I'm very pleased to be here and working with you on this side of the table.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. All right, I now move to item 2A, which is the approval of the January 2020 minutes. I am going to remind you all, if when you would like to approve any motions, or you can, and when you would like to speak, you have the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. And I can see almost all of them, but I'm going to have to scroll a little bit. So if I miss you, I apologize, but I'll scroll back and forth. All right, do I have a motion to approve the January 2020 minutes? So moved by Commissioner Cooney. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Rodriguez. Discussion? Will the recording secretary call for the vote? Each member please respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Kathleen Ellerby,
You have to unmute.
Abstain.
Kirsten Barnes,
Abstain.
C. Michael Cooney,
Aye.
Marisol De La Torre Escobedo,
Aye.
Johanna Harwick,
Aye.
Alicia Hine,
Aye.
Terry Jackson,
Aye.
Bonnie Clapp,
Aye.
Kevin Quinn,
Aye.
Jean Marks, Jane Marks,
You have to unmute.
Aye.
Cynthia Martin,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez,
Aye.
David Simons,
Aye.
sorry. Tina Sloan.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is 2B, approval of the April 2020 agenda. We have a revised item 2B and agenda insert 3A. Do I have a motion to approve the April 2020 agenda? So moved by Commissioner Hartwig. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Barnes. Discussion? Will the recording secretary call for the vote? Each member please respond with an aye, nay, or abstain.
Kathleen Ellerby,
Aye.
Kirsten Barnes,
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney,
Aye.
Marisol De La Torre Escobedo,
Aye.
Johanna Harwick,
Aye.
Alicia Hine,
Aye.
Terry Jackson,
Aye.
Bonnie Clapp,
Aye.
Kevin Quinn,
Aye.
Jane Marks,
Aye.
Cynthia Martin,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez,
Aye.
David Simons,
Aye.
Tina Sloan.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Agenda item 2C, sorry, no, we are on
2C.
agenda item 2D.
I don't think so. I think, Madam Chair,
Are we
I
on
think we need to do
2C?
the
Did I
consent.
move? Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. My apologies. All right, agenda item 2C is approval of the April 2020 consent calendar. Do commissioners have any items they would like to consider in closed session? Commissioner Hartwig.
I would like to consider number 35, Franco, and number 43, Hart.
Commissioner Hind.
Number 60, Laura Kuykendall. Number 66, Jason Marcus. Number 70, Amygdala Moskiti.
Commissioner Klatt.
I would like to consider number 98, Schlip.
Commissioner Kong.
I'd like to consider number 108, Tran, Dong Tran.
Okay. Are there any others?
Do you want to run through those numbers again? Okay, would you like to repeat back what you heard? Yes, you can present. So, Madam Chair, with your indulgence, we'd like to read back the numbers that we heard and make sure we caught that correctly. So,
yes.
General Counsel will read the numbers back that she received.
Number 35, Franco. Number 43, Hart. Number 60, I did not hear the name. What was the name of number 60?
It's
Please,
Laura Kuykendall.
Kuykendall.
Number 66, Marcus. Number 70, I did not hear the name.
Last name Mascati.
Number 98, Schlip. And number 108, Tran. Does that complete the list?
Okay. And Commissioner Kong, I still see your hand raised. Do you mean to have it raised or? Okay. Good. All right. Do I have a motion to approve all remaining items on the consent calendar? So moved by Commissioner Barnes. Do I have a second? So moved by seconded by Commissioner Kung. Will the recording secretary call for the vote? Each member please respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Kathleen Allervy,
Unmute.
Aye.
Kirsten Barnes,
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney,
Aye.
Marisol De La Torre Escobedo,
Aye.
Johanna Harwick,
Aye.
Alicia Hine,
Aye.
Terry Jackson,
Aye.
Bonnie Clapp,
Aye.
Kevin Kwon,
Aye.
Jane Marks,
Aye.
Cynthia Martin,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez,
Aye.
David Simmons,
Aye.
Tina Sloan. Did I hear
Hi,
Tina?
Ju. We lost you.
Rhonda, go ahead and I don't know
Can,
why.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Now I can.
Yes.
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 now-
Okay.
So ask what Tina's
Tina,
saying.
can you repeat what's your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Item 2D is the chair's remarks. Recently, teachers and administrators from an elementary school near my university, where I sit today, advertised to students and families that they were doing a car train through the neighborhoods so students could see them. But I know it was the teachers who wanted to see their students. So the teachers and the school personnel were in each of their cars, and as they went through the neighborhoods, students and families stayed a safe distance away, and they were waving and cheering. This was a joyous occasion, but I'm sure you know that the teachers and principal were doing their best not to cry. They're worried. They're worried when they don't have eyes on their students every day. This is what I hear most from teachers in this time, that and that they're exhausted and that this is much harder than a long day at school. I'm worried about my students too. They're grown-ups, but it's a palpable responsibility I feel when it's me who's one of the few this quarter with eyes on them. There are thousands of teacher educators across our state who have eyes on their aspiring teachers, counselors, administrators, and other service professionals. They feel your anxiety and worry. They express it often. They advocate for what you need, and we are listening. Today, we're going to do what we can to alleviate some of the stress of the moment. Today, we're going to work on pathways to get you hired in the fall. We have 2 items focused on actions the Commission might take related to COVID-19. The first item, 3A, provides options for candidates related to specific credential requirements and requests from preparation programs that the Commission allow them to recommend candidates for a variable term waiver, which will allow more time to complete preparation. The second, item 4A, provides options for the Commission to allow flexibility in the implementation of standards related to clinical practice for all types of credentials. Item 3A, as well as prior communication to the field, explains what can and cannot be modified by the Commission. This is important to understand. Requirements in Ed Code or Title V regulations are things we do not have authority to address on our own. These include particular requirements related to exams, including performance assessments. I want you to know that we are working on and have been working on multiple pathways to come to solutions. I want you to know that we are working with the governor's administration on an executive order to address some of these issues. We're also working on trailer bill language. This pathway, if it exists, is still a work in progress, as you can imagine. The governor has a huge amount to address with COVID-19 across all sectors. The things he's doing in education represents a significant percentage of the array of issues, but there's a lot to do in this crisis. Today, we are working with what the Commission has the purview to do. It's important that we work through an array of solution strategies. Tomorrow, there may be other options. At the Commission, we are well aware that the situation continues to evolve. What we thought we solved a month ago looks different a week later and looks different today. And I want you to know how hard everyone here is working. Days, nights, weekends, they've been incredible. We know we need to be flexible as the situation evolves. We know how hard everyone else is working too. People running district offices who are trying to deal with the crisis in the moment and plan for an uncertain future. So I'll conclude with a heartfelt thank you that I hope all of you in the business of education are getting from others. You're providing support, you're providing food for young people who would otherwise go without. Our food service staff and so many others are doing this at their own risk. For all of you, I want you to know that we think what we think about today, we think about tomorrow, we continue to evolve with the situation. We are holding our core values grounded in the responsibility to school children, families, and educators at the heart of the decisions that we're making. So let's get started. Agenda item 2E is the Executive Director's report. Mary, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. It is a little surreal to walk into this room on a Commission meeting day and not be able to greet you in person. I'm very glad to be able to see your faces and to welcome our two new commissioners, Commissioner Martin and Commissioner Simmons. You complete us. We are at 19, and all 19 of you are here, and 20 counting our student liaison. I think that may be a first. Maybe it's a second in the last 8 years, maybe the second time we've had every seat filled and present for a meeting. And it's wonderful that we're all able to be together at all. But I'm thankful that we have the technology available to us to do that. We also, I think, are hitting an all-time record of attendance with about 480 people tuning in on the Zoom. Welcome. And we can't see you, but we know you're there, and we're glad that you're with us. I'd like to take a moment and introduce a new member of our staff, Mr. Lin Win, who joined the staff on March the 2nd as our Chief Deputy Director. We had 2 weeks in the office to get to know his face, and then we all went on, stay at home. So he's finishing his 8th week with us and has been getting to know people in this venue. But Lynn, would you like to say good morning to the Commission?
Absolutely. Good morning. Very happy to be here. Glad to be back in state service, actually, after 8 years in the private sector. And I tell you, what I miss the most is service to the public. It's something that you don't realize until you've been in the private sector for a while. And I do want to recognize the staff. I came in at a very odd time in state history, but I couldn't be more proud of how they've stepped up to the plate and gone above and beyond. And also learning how complicated and complex the business of the CTC is. And I just hope that I can contribute a little bit to its success. So, pleased to meet you all.
Thank you, Lynn. I want to echo my appreciation for the staff. Some people, when they hear the shelter in place, maybe duck and run for cover and close the doors and wait until it's safe to come out again. And while our whole staff, pretty much, except a core group that stayed in the building, has been at home, working from home for 37 days, they have not ducked, covered, or closed their doors. They have doubled down. Every single bit of flexibility that we could find in your existing policies, regulations, standards, etc., we have written about and provided guidance to the field regarding. We created a dedicated page on our website. In the head, there's a banner right across the top front page of our website for COVID-19. There are numerous documents there that provide guidance on all manner of things that we are getting questions about. We are receiving questions still probably daily from the public about various aspects of credentialing and programs and et cetera. And we are updating the FAQs regularly to keep in contact with the field. We have been, we're becoming very expert at Zoom, I will say, because it's the way in which we're able to engage with every stakeholder group possible to hear what they're experiencing and to use that information to help us shape the questions that we can answer and the questions that we can't answer. As Chair Sloan pointed out, there are things that we can do, and those are on your agenda. Everything that we could bring to bear in front of you that you have the authority to take action on, I believe, is on your agenda relative to creating flexibility and pathways for candidates seeking credentials and for programs who are trying to help their candidates get to that credential. And so we have a weighty agenda for you to weigh in on. And anything that is in statute or regulation, we are seeking other means. We're in conversations regularly with the administration and the legislature about ways that we can provide supportive flexibility to candidates through other means. Those items are not on the agenda today, but we do have a packed agenda for you to consider and take action on. And with that, I think I'll close my report and wish us all a good meeting.
Thank you, Executive Director Sandy. Do commissioners have items to report? Commissioner Alavi?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, since I last saw you all, I have had the auspiciously timed election to become the president of our school board. And I wanted to just say that there may come a time today that I'm going to have to pop off. I hate to destroy Mary's perfect attendance, but I may have to pop off. And I didn't know the legality of that. If we come and go, can someone answer that question if I just pop off to take a phone call very quickly? Is there a problem with that? Okay,
that is not a problem.
That. Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that. And I also wanted to say that I think we have learned, if anyone has ever taken a teacher and their role for granted, I think we have learned that that's not the case any longer. We've been tracking our 40,000 kids, trying to get them all online learning, and our teachers have done a wonderful job. We're so inspired by them and the work that they've done. So just to teachers everywhere, fantastic job, and very proud of them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Alavi. Commissioner Brown.
Good morning, everyone. You're right, Mary. It's just really good to see people's faces. I just wanted to thank the Commission on behalf of the community colleges of California, our faculty and programs in education and early childhood, child development, special ed. We're really, all of us were undone by how rapidly this befell us. And all the student teachers were just really, really worried, as well as their faculty. So I wanted to thank the Commission on behalf of all of us for your guidance on field experience, for the Educator preparation programs on COVID-19. I know that the child development permit is not as big of a program as all of the credentialing programs are, but we really used this as guidance. We see ourselves as bridging into being more full members of this, of the, not just the commission, but the education plan for the citizens of California. We too have become Zoomsters, and sometimes Zoom zombies. And I don't know what we'll all look like at the end of Friday, but I'm really glad to see you all today.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Hartwig.
Good morning. I would just want to give my best wishes to all of the commissioners and all of the staff and all of the school employees on the call. I hope everybody is well, and thank you for the incredibly hard work you're doing. I wanted to share a resource. A good friend of mine has written a children's book, as well as a coloring book, to help children deal with anxiety related to the COVID crisis. My friend, Dr. Daniela Owen, is a PhD clinical therapist who specializes in working with children and teens and their families who suffer from anxiety. And despite the fact that she is about to have a baby in a couple of weeks, she took it on herself to write a children's book that is free. It is called Right Now I Am Fine. And there's a book that's really aimed more for younger children than for teens. There's a coloring book that goes with it, and she also has a video of her reading the book. You can find it. I'm going to give you the URL where you can find it, and then also how you can just search for it. It's very easy to find. And again, it's totally free and meant to be printed or shared as much as anybody would want. It is at rightnowiamfine.wordpress.com, or it's easy to find if you search for Right Now I Am Fine and Daniela Owen, which is the name of my friend. I think it could be a very nice resource for all sorts of different people, so please feel free to share that resource. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to reach out and contact me. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartwig. All of the resources that we can get for our young people is just so important and helpful at this moment. Commissioner Barnes.
Hello, everyone. Good to see everyone. Just wanted to share that CDE put out a really good link with a lot of resources for mental health for students, and actually adults and staff. There's all kinds of links on there. If someone's suffering, having anxiety, some things they can do. Also, CASC has put out a toolkit, which I'll send that email in a link. But a lot of as well for staff, students. There's lessons. Please encourage any of your students at your schools, if they do have school counselors, to reach out, because we might have to talk to them virtually, but we're still here. And then we still have a lot of students that need our support throughout this. So just know there's a lot of resources out there. And, if you're not hearing from someone, if you're a teacher and you're not hearing from someone, or your students are kind of like disappeared, I'm sure you're letting someone know, but those of you that have school counselors, please utilize them.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnes. Our school counselors are always critical, but gosh, right now we're really relying on them. Commissioner Hind.
Good morning. I just wanted to give a shout out to our class of 2020, all of our seniors out there who've been looking forward to this moment their whole life and who are not going to get to have it. So my son's a senior. He's probably excited because he's not really into the whole school thing, but for everyone else that's been looking forward to this their whole life and is not going to get it, let's give a little virtual hug. And when we get the chance again, we'll give some big hugs and try to make it better for them.
Thank you, Commissioner Hind. Any other commissioner reports? Okay, do liaisons have items to report? Commissioner Strauss?
Hi, everybody. So I'm actually fortunate to be liaison from the State Board of Education to the Credentialing Commission, and just want to support all of the comments and from the State Board, just how amazing teachers and leaders are doing out in the field to try to address this really challenging situation. I just would say I'm teaching a class on Zoom, And I appreciate all the comments, but it's a real challenge. And I believe everybody's working harder than they ever have to try to provide. And we're finding statewide, and as you know, your former chair, Linda Darling Hammond, who's now our president, has been working really, really hard with the governor and with the state superintendent Thurman. We've found the issue of distance learning a really high priority statewide, particularly because not all of our students have the digital tools and not all of them have the internet and accessible, but the districts and the businesses have been trying so hard. And so, and I would say probably those of you out in the districts, both in teacher and leader positions, you know, and probably will be able to share those comments. Also, the food service has been amazing. And so just as you talked about the CTC website, the CDE, the state, the Department of Education website has quite a few updates. There's been a lot of webinars and Facebook Live updates. And I know, even though I'm working all day, I sometimes take time to watch those, and that's really helpful. We will have our first Zoom remote state board meeting. It'll be a one-day meeting on Thursday, the 7th of May. That agenda posts tomorrow. And we will be addressing a lot of issues in our policy arena, like the Credentialing Commission is, that has to do with waivers and has to do with adapting in this time. And so you might know that we got a waiver from the federal government, so we're not going to be doing testing, and that affects all the state accountability and dashboard reports and everything. So we'll have a full update on that. And we are, in addition to what the commission's doing, some of it is we have authority on, some of it is governor executive order, some of it is legislative action. And so for those of you that are particularly interested in those issues, there'll be a full update. Obviously, there'll be no assessment data, so we'll skip the 1920 year, and then the data and change will be from 1819 to 2021. And so there'll be some updates and continue to evolve. One thing I usually update you on is our state frameworks. We're ready to go to final approval of visual and performing arts and world language, which we've been working on for a long time. The Department of Ed is going to be recommending changing the timelines because of the priorities under COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll have an update on the new timelines for new framework resources and materials that will also happen at our state board meeting on the 7th. And just finally, just thank you all for everything you're doing to provide our kids and grandkids support. I appreciate the sharing of the resource on Right Now I'm Fine, because I know, I think it's really, really hard for parents and for kids all ages. So thank you all. And again, if there are issues that you believe are within our policy, and I know Mary Vixie Sandy's been working with Karen Steph Walters at the state board level, and we've been trying to coordinate all of these issues as well. So thanks for letting me be part of this process.
Thank you, Liaison Strauss. Student Liaison Baladoy. How are you doing, Lindsay?
Hi, I'm doing good, thank you. Oh, sorry.
No, we're good. We can hear you.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, I just wanted to also extend my gratitude to the commission for constant communication. It's really been helping having kind of knowing what's going on during this really uncertain time, both learning how to be a student online as well as learning how to teach online. So it's been very interesting for student teachers, to say the very least. But just the constant communication and leadership from the commission is, we're very thankful for that. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Liaison Baladoy. All right, we have Commissioner Rodriguez.
Hey, let me unmute here. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see all of you, and I'd like to acknowledge all of the hard work that CTC staff are doing during this tremendous, I don't even, the pandemic and shock and changes that we're going through, as well as the State Board of Education and their leadership. So I was unable to attend the COA's meeting. However, I did catch it on the replay on YouTube, and which is, one of the things that you can go on to the YouTube channel and watch all of these meetings. And, in addition to the accreditation visits and site visits that have continued via Zoom, one of the things that's, I think, most important to report here is any information, and I believe Director Sandy mentioned this, CTC has really worked hard to keep all of our stakeholders up to date. And if you go on the website, there's a green ribbon that you can't miss with COVID-19 information. And Terry Clark spoke at length about some of the changes that we would be voting on at today's commission meeting, and the capable hands that our committee of accreditation, whether it's the leadership, Terry and Cheryl Hickey and everyone else, as this transition happens based on not being able to do physical site visits, but continuing all of the work that, and just soldiering on through all of this to make sure that the universities or our colleges, our teacher prep programs are continuing to do the rigorous work of, meeting the standards that we've set so that our teachers are prepared. And with the flexibility that has been given to some of the teacher prep programs and the way they're going to handle a lot of these changes, there will be a report during the site visits and during accreditation that will be given to COA so that they'll be able to see how the teacher prep programs or administrative prep programs adapted flexibly and I want to say creatively, but how they use their resources to adapt to this change as well and to accommodate their students. And so that said, we'll be visiting all of our, a lot of the work during our meeting. But I just wanted to let you know. And green ribbon YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you.
And no, I'm not at CTC. It just looks that way.
Nice backdrop.
I like your backdrop. Are there any other liaison reports? Good. Seeing none, I want to acknowledge the collective wisdom we have in our Zoom room. I want to acknowledge the collective hearts we have here. It's clear by everybody's comments that we are in a caring profession, and we care deeply for every one of our students in schools, many of whom, those of you on the commission, are missing right at this moment. We thank you for being here to do this work. We thank all of our stakeholders. We currently have 537 participants on the line, and we look forward to getting to work. So with that, I now recess the general session. Members of the commission, oops, I'm sorry, not that one. I should have printed this out. I now recess the general session and move to the Appeals and Waivers Committee. Commissioner Kung, will you please convene the committee?
Yes, thank you. I now convene the April 2020 meeting of the Appeals and Waiver Committee to order. We have one agenda item. I would like to remind members of the public that wish to speak on this item to please email your request to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. Please make sure the request includes your full name, phone number if participating through the phone only, your affiliation, and the agenda item number and title. Make sure the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comments at the appropriate time. After you finish your comment, the microphone will be muted by the meeting host. 3A. Item 3A is consideration of actions to assist applicants, educators, and credential candidates impacted by the emergency health and safety conditions related to COVID-19. The item will address 3 specific areas where the Commission may take action, including possible deferral of the CBEST exam, expansion of extensions and renewals, and requests for variable term waivers submitted by program sponsors. This is an action item and will be presented by Erin Skubal. Ms. Skubal, will you begin?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. It's very nice to virtually be here with you all and to be working somewhere other than my kitchen table. So it's a good change. As touched upon by Chair Sloan and Executive Director Sandy, the current hardships created by the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order have created a series of complicated and challenging circumstances for credential candidates, applicants, and credential holders. As we know, educator preparation and requirements for certification are built upon a scaffolding of laws outlined in Education Code and in Title V regulations. These laws often leave little or no room for flexibility in times such as the one we find ourselves in today. Nevertheless, Commission staff have been working around the clock to identify areas in statute and in regulations where you, as a body, can take action to provide flexibility for educators that are impacted by the health and safety conditions related to COVID-19. While we know that the options provided in Item 3A may not present perfect solutions for all issues faced by the education community, they are the specific options legally afforded to the Commission that can be implemented without having to navigate the lengthy legislative or regulatory process. Now, this item will present 3 areas where the Commission might provide flexibility for credential candidates, for applicants, and for credential holders. And I'm going to give 4 specific actions that the Commission could take to activate this flexibility. So the first option for flexibility is intended for credential applicants and is provided in Education Code Section 44252.8, which gives the Commission the authority to defer the state's basic skills examination requirement in certain circumstances. Most all of California's credentials and permits require the completion of the basic skills requirement, which can be done through the passage of the California Basic Education Skills Test, or CBEST. As you may know, the testing centers that administer the CBEST are currently closed, preventing educators from being able to fulfill this requirement. Now, Education Code 44252.8 allows the Commission to defer the CBEST exam when a candidate is unable to obtain a passing score on the exam due to circumstances beyond their control. This section of statute does not allow deferral of the exam for individuals who have previously failed the exam. But individuals who have not been able to attempt all 3 subtests of the CBEST may be approved for a deferral. So given this, staff recommends that the Commission approve a 1-year deferral of the CBEST for any applicant that was unable to complete the exam due to COVID-19 between March 19th and September 1st of this year. This deferral would allow staff to grant credentials and permits to applicants who have met all requirements other than the basic skills requirement and would allow these applicants up to 1 year to pass the exam. So the second area that the Commission has the authority to offer flexibility in would assist current credential holders. Now, the Commission has the authority to allow renewals and extensions of existing credentials and permits that contain renewal requirements, and we have several policies and processes in place to do that. There's 2 types of renewable documents: those that are clear documents and only require timely submission of an online application and fee for renewal, and those that are conditional documents that identify some type of requirement for renewal or to move on to the next credential in the hierarchy. Because of COVID-19, holders of both types of documents have encountered hardships related to renewing. First, clear credential holders may have experienced health or safety issues that prevented the timely submission of their online application. When this happens, a clear credential holder's document can expire, leaving them with a lapse in their credential's validity. If an educator's credential lapses, employers are often required to remove the educator from payroll status, causing issues with the educator's pay. Educators can go online to complete their clear credential renewal at any time after a lapse in their credential validity, but they may not be paid for the days or weeks in which their credential was expired. The Commission has the authority in Section 80496 of Title V regulations to grant a renewal without a lapse in time for clear credential holders who were unable to renew timely because of illness, military service, or other serious reason. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission identify the current health and safety conditions related to COVID-19 as a valid reason to allow such clear document holders to renew their credential without a lapse in validity. This action would allow these credential holders to submit an application for a 5-year clear credential renewal that could be issued without a lapse in validity. Your action today could also move to expand what is considered as good cause for extensions of time on those credentials and permits that have requirements for renewal. This is different from the clear credential renewals. These are documents that have some type of condition for the educator to move to either a renewal or the next document in the hierarchy. Authority outlined in Title V, Section 80523, along with current policy, allows staff to issue extensions of 1 year to holders of preliminary teaching and services credentials, intern credentials, and renewable permits when an applicant can verify good cause for their failure to complete the renewal requirements identified on their document. Flexibility in the regulation allows for the Commission to consider the current health and safety conditions related to COVID-19 as good cause for these types of extensions of time on qualifying credentials and permits. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission identify that hardships related to COVID-19 and circumstances caused by the current health and safety crisis be considered as good cause for requests for extension of time of 1 year on eligible credentials and permits. Such extensions shall require verification in writing that the credential holder was impacted by the health and safety restrictions and an explanation as to why the credential holder was unable to complete their renewal requirements. It's important to note that this extension option would not be applicable to provisional internship and short-term staff permits, as those documents are not renewable and carry no conditions for renewal. So the third area for consideration today is designed to create employment pathways for credential candidates who were unable to complete one or more preparation requirement due to COVID-19. The Commission has the authority to issue variable term waiver documents to allow candidates additional time to complete requirements for educator preparation and credentialing. And that section of Education Code is 44225M. Now, historically, the Commission has issued variable term waivers based on public school employer requests, but the Commission also has the authority to grant such requests made by educator preparation programs. In recent weeks, preparation programs have flooded Commission staff with requests to waive credential requirements. Now, while the Commission does not have the authority to generally waive requirements that are identified in statute and regulations, it does have the authority to issue waiver documents that would allow candidates to begin their careers as educators while working towards completion of their unfinished requirements. Attachment A in your agenda item and the item insert provide a list of the Commission-approved programs that have requested the ability to apply for such a variable term waiver on behalf of their candidates who were unable to complete their program. These programs submitted this waiver request for all candidates who were making appropriate progress and who were on track to complete their preparation program by September 1st of 2020, but who were not able to complete either their clinical practice hours, coursework, exams, or a performance assessment that is required for program completion. You may note that your item actually lists July 1st as the date identified by program sponsors making this request, but the date actually identified by these programs is September 1, 2020, so we would like to point that out. So to give these candidates the opportunity to start their careers while they work towards completion of one or more of these final requirements, staff recommends that the Commission authorize the variable term waiver requests submitted by the Commission-approved institutions outlined in Appendix A and in your item insert. Staff also recommends that the Commission approve the option for such institutions to submit one-time requests for the reissuance of these waivers in cases where a candidate was unable to complete all requirements but has shown continued progress towards completion of the preparation program during the validity of an initial variable term waiver. Should the Commission approve the options presented here today, staff will work to provide guidance to educators, employers, and preparation programs on how to implement these flexibility options, and will begin issuing credentials, permits, and waivers to qualifying candidates. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have regarding these options.
Okay, thank you. We will now open for public comment. Given the large number of individuals wishing to address the Commission, each speaker will be provided 1 minute to give their comments. We'll ask that you keep your remarks brief and focus on this agenda item. You will get a 1 minute warning and will be asked to finish your sentence before being muted by the meeting host. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
Yes. Our first public comment is from Mary Gray.
Thank you, Ms. Gray.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mari Gray with CAPIA, whose members prepare preliminary administrative services credential candidates. The variable term waiver does not address the serious equity issues that our candidates are confronting, nor the context in which they are completing the Cal APA. The first consequential year of Cal APA is occurring in the midst of an unprecedented pandemic, and our educators are on the front lines, teaching remotely and providing food, technology, and social-emotional support to their students. They do this while supervising their own children's learning, completing their credentialing classes, and the Cal APA leadership cycles. Their leadership is responsive and exemplary. The Cal APA cycles conflict with the leadership actions required to address the immediate and foreseeable needs of students, teachers, students, families, and school communities. We ask the Commission to suspend the exam through summer 2020 and authorize accredited programs to verify candidates' completion of credential requirements like you've done in previous years.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Saret Kaminsky.
Please begin when you're ready.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Kaminsky. I'm Policy Director at CSESA, representing the County Superintendents. First, I want to welcome Commissioners Simmons and Martin, and I also want to thank the CTC staff for their substantial outreach to the field and their outstanding communication during this time. CTC staff has been available for meetings with county office staff, adapted their FAQs and resources after hearing our feedback, and that's much appreciated. Regarding items 3A and 4A, CSESA appreciates the flexibility that's being considered regarding renewals of credentials, permits, and waivers. We ask that the district intern credential be given the same flexibilities that might be offered to candidates also prepared in the traditional pathway. We also ask that you consider potential costs to any flexibility so a candidate will not incur extra debt as a result of school or testing closures. Also, in your consideration of the use of variable term waivers, we ask you to consider the negative connotations that are designated under these waivers, since this is defined as ineffective teacher under California's SSA plan. Finally, we also realize that any extension for PIPs and STIPs would require either an executive order or legislative action. We offer our support to seek an expedient remedy, since these candidates would lose these permits. They'd be automatically released from service. So thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Tricia Gallagher-Jurtson.
Hi, this is
Anyone, if you're
Tricia
ready.
Gallagher-Jurtson. Hi, I support the Commission in taking action to waive the Cal TPA and the Ed TPA. I am a lecturer at UCSD and a co-president of the California chapter of the National Association for Multicultural Education. So given the challenges that the pandemic poses to their equitable completion, but more importantly, we have to remember that research challenges both the validity and reliability of privatized teacher performance assessments, and the Cal TPA, Ed TPA, CBEST, and RICA disproportionately bar people of color from entering the teaching force. We have a shortage of teachers of color. Therefore, I ask that the CTC recommend Governor Newsom make an executive order not only to postpone but eliminate these assessments now and permanently. California should follow Wisconsin's example and recommend the legislature permanently remove the Ed TPA as a credentialing requirement. Let the university teacher education programs determine that student teachers master TPEs. Eliminate these tests now and permanently. Thank you.
Thank you.
Victoria Graff.
Good morning, commissioners. I hope you all can hear me. I'm representing the board of the California Association of Professors of Special Education, and we want to commend the commission staff for their hard work and tirelessly trying to come up with flexibility and support for our candidates. Our two issues that we're concerned about, one has to do with the variable term waiver not applying to interns. We understand that interns can have an additional year, but we think there may be some unintended consequences in terms of interns having an additional year with regard to salary and also additional costs to the university in terms of supervision. And so we would ask that interns be allowed to also pursue the variable term waiver. We're also very concerned about CSET being delayed in terms of prospective interns, especially in this time of shortage, and that universities have some confusion as to how to enroll potential candidates who may be eligible at some point for an intern credential, but with CSET not being open at this time, this could be a concern with regard to the shortage. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Is the recording secretary, is there the next speaker?
Richard Ayers.
Thank you.
Oh,
Richard Ayers, are you there?
he's disconnected. He was on.
Okay, maybe, okay.
We'll come back. We'll call him at the end of the list. Next
Okay.
speaker. Next public comment from Renee Hall.
Renee, when you're ready.
Good morning. My concern is that you have addressed the CBEST test, but not the CSET's requirements for internships. Is this something that will be addressed? And I ask that you take into consideration that candidates are not able to complete these exams due to the current situation. Candidates that are trying to become intern eligible by fall are not able to, with the testing centers being closed. Most of the testing centers that have the scanners for subtest 2 are all closed. And so subtest 2 is creating a huge problem for candidates trying to become intern eligible. We ask that you take into consideration and possibly give a waiver for these or extensions into these exams so that we can enter the intern program for next fall.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Miguel Zavala.
Yes, hi, good morning. My name is Miguel Zavala, and I'm director of the Urban Learning Program and associate professor at the Charter College here at Cal State LA. And I just want to say I'm responsible for 400 urban credential candidates, the vast majority of which are going through so much already. And COVID-19 has really amplified what was already there. In reference to item 3A, variable term waivers, and any other flexible measures, that's to be commended as actions on behalf of the CTC that are responsive to the present situation. Given the challenges that the pandemic poses to their equitable completion of basic student teaching requirements, our student teachers are simply not able to access and enact classroom teaching. Therefore, the least we can do, in my view, is waive requirements and be flexible, but that the CTC consider the structural conditions that some people have written about that are insurmountable and basically bar a diverse pool of candidates who are quite prepared and bring tremendous cultural wealth and energy from completing all requirements and joining the teaching force. So I echo what was said earlier. I asked the CTC recommend Governor Newsom make an executive order to simply eliminate all these. And this is grounded on research, but also practice.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zavella. But we have to go on to the many speakers, the large number of speakers. The next speaker.
Next speaker, Sheridan Kotzman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Sheridan Kautzman, and I'm a past candidate at Cal State East Bay. The proposed Cal APA variable term waiver dismisses equity issues that several individuals are experiencing during this pandemic. Like others, my professional and personal life has completely flipped upside down. Loss of income and financial support and added caregiving responsibilities has made my future unknown. Continuing with the current Cal APA cycles would be inauthentic, and who knows what my school would look like in the fall. I would like to go back to the school in the fall feeling empowered to leave the state schools without having the additional burden of completing the Cal APA cycles. After all, we know that these are unprecedented times and things won't just be normal upon returning to the school in the fall. California schools will need fresh, focused, and determined leaders like myself. Please consider suspending incomplete Cal APA cycles for candidates who will have completed their past programs by spring or summer 2020. Let our professors and accredited schools assess our completion just as they should and just as they have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Ruchi Ragnath.
Hi, my name is Ruchi Ragnath, and I am a professor at the University of San Francisco and also a program coordinator for South Bay branch. I work with many teacher candidates, and COVID-19 has led to a significant interruption in our teacher candidates' ability to access the coursework, advising, and student teaching experiences necessary to successfully navigate mandates, given the challenges of the pandemic poses to the equitable completion of the mandate. I ask that CTC recommend Governor Newsom make an executive order to not only eliminate these assessments, but now permanently. My colleague, Dr. Farima Khorshid, along with other two colleagues, have created a petition with over 5,000 signatures that really shows the challenges around TPA, CSET, and CBEST. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Harold Acord.
Hello, everyone. My name is Harold Acord. I'm a Spanish and German teacher in Moreno Valley, California, and I'm speaking on behalf of the 300,000 plus members of the California Teachers Association. We really want to thank the Commission for coming up with this item and also with item 4A. We feel that it is a good item and we support the actions that are proposed within the item. We also would like to urge the Commission to continue to pursue any and all avenues outside of your current authority, including with legislature and the governor, to make sure that current candidates have a way to earn the preliminary credential while ensuring that they are well prepared and well supported as they begin their career, and that potential incoming candidates in the fall of 2020 are not prevented from entering their programs because of their inability to take required tests and or meet other entrance requirements and deadlines because of this coronavirus pandemic. We want the Commission to please make sure that everyone has equitable access to all of these types of things that are happening in order to continue having a diverse and even more diverse group of new teachers coming in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Brian Johnson.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Brian Johnson, and I represent the Los Angeles Unified School District in the role of Director, Certificated Workforce Management. And I am here today on behalf of our HR Division leadership. And I'm grateful to be able to make this public comment regarding the Commission's consideration of actions to assist applicants, educators, and credential candidates who are impacted by the current health crisis. As the largest school district in the state, we would like to share that we have had hundreds of candidates and employees reach out to us regarding some of the flexibilities proposed for consideration here today, including variable term waivers, extensions on permits and credentials, and deferral of other requirements. We are glad to see that the Commission is considering providing flexibility for schools and LEAs so that we are able to work with educators to ensure that our classrooms are 100% staffed by qualified and appropriately certified teachers. We also hope that the Commission will be able to advocate to the appropriate authorities to enact reasonable flexibilities in areas outside the purview of the Commission that may serve to ensure that our students have access to excellent educators in these most difficult of times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Sarah Lillis.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Lillis. I'm the Executive Director for Teach Plus California. Overall, we're very supportive of the reasonable accommodations that the Commission staff are proposing. We feel like it's a really thoughtful approach, and we appreciate all the work they've done with their FAQs. We would like to offer our help in working with administration and legislature on some of these issues outside of the purview of the CTC, in particular addressing issues of cost to candidates, as well as allowing for the VTW to apply for interns. One other issue we did want to raise is around induction supports and potential funding and policy changes to recognize that we need flexibility and additional investment in our mentors and our induction to make sure that our new teachers are especially well supported. Also, we appreciate the guidance that the CTC has provided in the individual development plan, and recommend additional guidance on integrating it with the transition plan and identifying metrics for assessing the impact of many of these accommodations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Romel Antoine.
Ronald Anton, are you there?
Hi, good morning. Romel Antoine speaking for the California Charter Schools Association, which represents California's charter schools. First of all, I want to start by thanking the Commission staff for taking on this issue and maintaining such a high level of professionalism throughout this time by making sure that they're staying connected to the field, fielding what I'm sure are numerous requests from the field in terms of exceptions and waivers regarding credentials and other issues, and then maintaining that FAQ site that we know that educators across the state have been accessing. We are in strong support of the Commission's, the staff's recommendation to the Commission, and see this as a good first step to providing relief during this time. We know that there are additional issues that need to be addressed, which we have communicated with staff, specifically in this item related to the financial hardship that many teachers may be facing when it comes to applying for some of these waivers and exceptions. And so we ask that the Commission continue to keep this item at top of mind as we make sure that our students across the state have a prepared workforce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jarrett Austin Thomas.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to share. My name is Jared Austin Thomas. I support the high school network at Oakland Unified with teacher recruitment and retention. I believe the decision to not allow the renewal of CBEST waivers for candidates who have attempted and not passed is in direct opposition of the growth mindset that we expect our teachers to apply to our students. The CBEST data from 2012 to 17 shows that less than 69% of candidates who attempt the CBEST pass the first time, while 84% pass when given multiple attempts. These values are even more drastic for our teachers of color, where 54% of Latinx teachers and 47% of African American teachers will pass the assessment on the first attempt. In a district like Oakland, where 44% of students are Latinx and 23% are African American, the task of having a teacher corps that represents our students becomes exceedingly more difficult when the testing barrier is disproportionately preventing them from entering the classroom. I believe that there are numerous teachers in our district that did not pass on their first attempt, however, did tutoring and received support from the district, and we're looking to retake the test, but those attempts were canceled. It would be great if we would have the opportunity for teachers who have canceled test dates to be able to extend those waivers. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Borba.
John, whenever you're ready, if you can hear me.
sorry. My name's John Borba. I'm professor of school administration at California State University, Stanislaus. I support the waiver itself and continuation of the Cal APA program. However, I don't support the process. I wish to have you consider a blanket waiver for all school administration candidates who entered the program in 2019-20 school year. Also, we continue the same cutoff scores for APA, extend them through the 2020-21 school year. The thing is, I recommend this because the waiver process, I think we need one, but the way it's set up is an added distraction because candidates are already distracted by changing the way they deliver services, instruction, and the way counselors deliver counseling services. So please consider that kind of waiver that covers everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Barheit.
Hi, thanks so much for letting me talk. My name is Laura Barheit, and I'm the Associate Director of Talent at Rocketship Public Schools. It sounds like the first initiative that was presented allows for someone who has never taken the CBEST to receive a deferral. However, it doesn't seem that this covers teachers who have been working hard all year to pass the CBEST. As you know, it can take teachers a few attempts to be successful with the CBEST. Many of our teachers have been studying for the CBEST all year and taken the CBEST at least once. These teachers were scheduled to take their tests again in March and April when test centers closed. We want to ensure that these teachers who have been on top of these action items are not penalized for the fact that they have already attempted the test and want to ensure they are covered either in the deferral or the variable term waiver.
Okay. Thank you. Recording secretary, are there
Eleanor
any
Scott.
other public comments?
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Eleanor Scott. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a single mom, a performance artist, and a master's in credential candidate in the School of Education at the University of San Francisco. I'm an educator of 20 plus years. I have an English literature degree from Bowdoin College. I am not doing my student teaching this semester because I failed the ELA CSET, Section 4, by 8 points. And I am not ashamed. I'm only frustrated and gobsmacked. If someone with my background and experience fails, who else is failing and prevented from becoming a desperately needed teacher? I would be ashamed if the CSET and CBEST assessed my abilities to build relationships and truly practice humanizing pedagogy, especially as a privileged white woman with students and colleagues of color. But these assessments measure only arcane and trivial knowledge. It is a battery of antiquated and canonical facts that have little to no import on students, especially students and families of color. These assessments are gatekeepers, or in fact, walls that prevent humanizing inspired teachers to revolutionize California K-8, K-12 education. Yet I am hopeful. I witnessed 2004 when Mayor Newsom began the marriage equality
Okay, I
movement.
might have to ask you to please finish your sentence as we have a large number of speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Scott.
Good morning. Good morning, commissioners. Bon dia, buenos dias. I so wish that I was sitting across the table for you this morning. Can you give me a smile? Commissioner Cladd, I loved seeing your smile. I'm here today from Cal State East Bay. I'm representing CABE and CABTE. CABTE is the California Association for Bilingual Teacher Educators. As you've heard from public comments today, there's a lot of concern about the gatekeepers. The gatekeeper exams from CBEST to the TPAs. My concern is that our default has been equality. We need to start from equity. Equity means that we address the gatekeepers for many teachers of color, teachers who themselves were English learners, who are seeking to teach and serve our students. I would ask you to use equity in urging the governor to remove these barriers and returning the decision to the university level where equity can be applied more justly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I must have to cut you. Thank you.
Michael Del Castillo.
Hello, thank you for providing me this opportunity to speak. I have a couple questions. One question is for the variable term waiver, how you guys are addressing the possible lowered salaries for teachers. I would also like to ask if you guys would be able to make a motion to be able to submit a request to Governor Newsom to waive the EdTPA and CalTPA. This TPA assessment is causing a lot of stress amongst all of the California teacher candidates. We're currently trying to teach our students through distance learning, and it's only causing us more stress. I do not think it's an equitable solution that the CTC is having us try to teach virtually. And I think there should be a more equitable solution just besides the variable term waiver, especially because most of us will be probably getting lowered salaries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll now go back and call names of individuals just to confirm if they'd like to speak based off of their previous contact. G.T. Reyes.
Please raise your hand if you are on the line.
We'll go on to Rick Ayers.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Rick Ayers. I'm an associate professor of teacher education at the University of San Francisco. I support the Commission's variable term waiver of the CalTPA and EdTPA. This is also an opportunity to test the validity and reliability of mandates that are controlled by Pearson Corporation. Will we find problems, unprepared teachers given credentials in this period? I doubt it. This assessment does not weed out inappropriate candidates. The TPA has colonized our curriculum and undermined the focus on rigorous and relevant instruction that we are providing. My main point here is that the professional judgment of teacher education faculty should be the leading factor in approving teacher credentials. So I ask the CTC to recommend Governor Newsom make an executive order not only to eliminate these assessments now, but permanently. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Imler, are you on the line? Please raise your hand. Next, Ogechi Ibianusi, are you on the line? Please raise your hand. Andrew Dwan, if you're on, please raise your hand. Martha Gunter.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Martha Gunter. I've been a teacher since 2001. I started as teacher's assistant, and then I continued on to do tutoring. And now I have been teaching at a private school for 5 years. I have received my master's in education last year, but I haven't been able to pass the math and science CSET. And I've only had one attempt. And it's just really stopping me from continuing on. And I think there's a lot of us in that situation, and it's just really frustrating. And I think with evaluations and experience and a master's, I'm begging you guys to please consider some type of deferment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shay Mayor, are you online? If so, please raise your hand. Next, Angelica Montez.
Hi, I am a UC Davis multiple subjects teaching credential candidate. I am working in a 6th grade classroom here in Davis, California. I am really discouraged with the fact that I was unable to pass my RECA. I feel like no one has mentioned the RECA. And I cannot turn in my EdTPA because the expectations of the virtual term waiver or submitting it online are honestly just inequitable. The whole time that we are doing distant learning, it is all about trying to connect with our students, just trying to regulate their social emotional needs. It's really difficult to be told, you be a teacher, I just don't know when, because I have not met those requirements. I am asking for the CTC to push forward with just eradicating these requirements that honestly, there is no research that says that this qualifies a good teacher in a classroom. Thank you.
Thank you.
That would be the last public comment.
Okay. Seeing that there's no other comments, the public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Simmons?
This is very strange speaking from this side of the table. Okay, I think that some of the candidates
Commissioner Simmons, can I just interrupt you for a moment? And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kung, we have, Commissioner Kung, excuse me, we had one more speaker that has shown up. If you don't mind, can we take that comment and then move to commissioner discussion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Olivier
Sorry.
Castaneda.
I guess yes. Olivier?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
please,
thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Olivier Castaneda. I am a graduate student in the bilingual program at San Jose State University. And I am here to petition the cancellation of the education TPA due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I feel it would be an unfair decision to require teacher candidates to complete a teaching assessment during our current times of distress, especially with the acute shortage of bilingual teachers in California. In particular, it would be unethical to require the compliance to obtain a credential when our daily lives are focused not only on our studies, but on confronting this crisis and on coping with our aching hearts that empathize with families who have lost victims to this ghastly virus. I hope you use your power to act with dignity, equity, and justice to help promote potential educators. Muchas gracias por su liderazgo. Thank you for your leadership. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Recording Secretary, are there any other public comments or any other speakers?
We don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I guess now the public comment period for this item is now closed, and we'll go back to commissioners, their questions and comments, and we left with Commissioner Simmons. So if you'd like to restart.
Okay, I really think that Erin and her staff did a wonderful job putting this item together. It really does outline what the commission can do and what the commission can't do. I wanted to say just one thing about the variable term waivers. They are a good solution that the commission can actually work on. It gets people so that they're starting to get STRS credit. It gets them on payroll, allows them to use that time to clear their credential potentially. That one issues, or the three issues that I think it doesn't address, are the ineffective status, but I don't think we can do anything about that. There are potential salary issues that some of the speakers alluded to. In my local area, about half the bargaining units say that if you have a provisional credential, which a variable term waiver would be, you don't move on the salary schedule until such time as you get a preliminary credential. That could be dealt with locally. The other issue that nobody brought up so far is the issue of permanency. Ed Code 44911 says that time spent on a provisional credential can't be used for permanence. That's why, but at least they're working. So although the variable term waiver does seem to be the best option, if we could get a higher power to intervene, I think that would be helpful for our candidates.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brown?
You won't be surprised to know that I'm asking questions about the child development permit because, of course, that's one of the listed credentials and permits that are eligible for extensions. So I guess I'll start by asking a general question. What are the implications of this item for all of the community colleges who work with candidates for the child development permit? I know that's a broad one. I have some specifics, but they may get answered by the broad question I'm asking.
Thank you for that question. So because the child development permit requirements are not part of an approved preparation program, those institutions would not be able to apply for the variable term waiver for those individuals. We're looking for those child development permit holders who are already holding a permit and who are looking to move forward on that permit scale on that hierarchy of permits. They can request that extension that would allow them an additional year to serve, to continue to work while they complete requirements. We're also, trying to find as much flexibility in those child development permit requirements as we can. We've heard that a lot of institutions are issuing credit on a pass or fail. And we are accepting any college courses that that grant credit on a pass or on a credit basis. We don't need to see a letter grade. We also just look for the course title on a transcript when it requires that supervised field component. We look that the course description includes that supervised field component in the description. We don't require that the applicant or the institution provide a specific number of hours to have been met. So we're looking at ways in which we can be flexible in interpreting those requirements that are outlined in regulations. But unfortunately, the variable term waiver would not be an option for those candidates.
So what you're saying is that let me just see if I got this right, because I'm, of course, going to go back to all my folks who are going to ask me. So the extension for renewal does apply to any child development permit holder whose permit would be expiring in the next year because they weren't able to finish that. So they can apply for a renewal extension, just like any other candidate showing good cause. But as to the programs themselves, they will not need to apply for a variable term waiver. And as long as they're working within the guidelines of the field experience that the commission offered around supervised field experience. Those candidates then that successfully passed that course this spring, that course and any other course required for the permit would be considered legitimate. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
That's it. I'll lower my hand. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Grennell-Schreier.
Good morning, colleagues. It's good to see all of you. I want to start my comments by just thanking Executive Director Sandy and Chair Sloan for their leadership during this very, very difficult time. They have been incredible thought partners to all of us in the higher ed space. I also want to say that I appreciate all the comments of the faculty and students and the other presenters, and we do hear you. We have been listening to the field as we have been trying to navigate this very difficult time. Erin, I had two questions, comments that maybe you can talk a little bit more about. What has to do with the intern eligibility? There have been several comments and concerns about that. So if you could tell us more about why interns would not be eligible for the variable term waiver, I think that would be helpful. And then the issue about retesting of CBEST, can you talk more about that and any possible solutions for that? Thank you.
Absolutely. So let me start with the intern issue. So actually, there are several intern program sponsors that are listed in Appendix A and in the insert of the item as potential institutions that would be able to apply for this waiver. Now, interns already are serving on a document. So they are issued a credential while they are completing their intern program. So really, if an intern is continuing to serve in their same assignment that they were serving in during their intern program, and their employer is continuing employment, and their program is continuing affiliation with that intern, then that intern should be applying for an extension. They do not need the variable term waiver because they already hold a document. They're already serving in an assignment. They're continuing service in that assignment, and they're continuing affiliation with their program. So they would be requesting an extension of that intern. If for some reason that intern candidate was not continuing in their placement with that employer that they've been working with through their program, and they need to seek employment elsewhere, that would be the case where a variable term waiver would be appropriate for an intern candidate. We are working on specific guidance for that very issue to kind of delineate between those two scenarios, and we will be posting that soon. So it's not necessarily that the variable term waiver is not an option. It's just that program sponsors and employers are going to need to work together to identify which pathway they should take for those intern candidates. And then related to the second portion of the question for the basic skills requirement and the deferral of CBEST, the section of statute that provides the commission with the authority to do this deferral, and that's 44252.8, it very explicitly states that the deferral cannot be used for an individual who has failed the CBEST. It is not an option. Statute does not allow us to defer the CBEST exam for someone who has attempted the exam and failed it. So, you know, we're not taking this lightly. We didn't purposefully not include that population of individuals. The statute simply does not allow us to defer the exam for that population.
Okay. Commissioner Brown?
I'm back. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay. Sometimes when you press a button, it doesn't work. I've gotten some other questions, just a couple, Erin, and thank you for your patience on this. So we talked about the issue around renewal of the child development permit, but there are going to be candidates who are going to be applying for their initial child development permit. Are you talking about not needing to see a letter grade for the spring 2020 semester only, or were you saying it in general?
That is actually a general requirement. If a course includes a letter grade, it needs to be grade C or better. But the commission will always, for child development permits, accept coursework if it is just a pass or if it just shows credit. So that is actually a policy that we always have had.
Okay, so that hasn't changed, and that would be part of your evaluation for initial permits, not just for renewals.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do any other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Francois?
Thank you. I actually have a couple of observations. My questions were answered in response to some other questions that were raised. The first observation is that I really appreciate the flexibility and trying to get our candidates into the field as quickly as possible, while at the same time maintaining the standards that we expect for new teachers to enter into the profession. And that's really what the variable term waiver provides. But I also don't want to lose sight of some of the challenges that Commissioner Simmons brought up. There are nuances in that waiver and in the relationship between districts and the candidates that really have to be worked out. So as this evolves and we continue conversations with either the governor's staff or with one another, I think we need to really tease out those exceptions. For instance, if you cannot begin earning tenure until you're on a preliminary credential, and so you're losing a year essentially, and how that is tied into your salary, all those things have to be worked out. The other thing that I'm a bit concerned about with the variable term waiver is that I think it's wonderful to give folks the gift of time to finish, to get some of these requirements completed. But we can't lose sight of the fact that these candidates are going to begin their first year teaching with a cohort of students, K-12 students, who are going to bring with them in the classroom, whether physically or virtually, all of the socio-emotional challenges, as well as the trauma that they and their families have experienced during COVID. And that's going to be a lot of heavy lifting that these candidates are going to have to take on, in addition to their own kind of sense of trauma and socio-emotional well-being, because they are taking care of themselves and their families during this time. So I am a bit concerned that adding additional responsibilities into their first year of teaching I think it's going to be tough for some of them. And I hope that we can, as we continue conversations and work with others on permanent, more long-term solutions, that we will keep that in mind.
Sorry. I think Commissioner Wall, you have a question or comment?
Well, I have more of a comment than a question. First of all, I think that that what is really done exceptionally well here, and I want to applaud the staff, is identifying what can be done within existing statute. I want to just emphasize that point. I think that that's so important. I think the second thing that echoes Anne-Marie's comment is that, to me, this situation evolves every day. And so I would urge us to think about what can be done now, and then as things continue to evolve, what additionally will have to be done as we move along. To me, this is, and the clarification helps both the path coming in, and I appreciated the clarification about the CBEST, because there are questions about, why not, why if someone has previously failed, I've gotten those questions, why can't they be deferred? So it's very helpful to hear that answer. And then I think from the perspective of a person sitting in an institution that's trying to help students finish, the variable term waiver answers so many questions right now. I'm not saying it answers all the future questions, but it does so much at the moment to help to say what's the path that we can help to provide students. And so I know that there's a lot of, could we do additional things, but given what we know we can do, I just think it's so helpful. And I still think we're going to have to come up with new solutions as the situation continues to evolve.
Okay, thank you. Chair Sloan.
Thank you. Thank you for our comments from the field. They were very helpful. And the questions that you all asked. Thank you, Erin, for your informative responses. I think all of my questions were responded to. I wanted to just echo a couple of things that we did hear. I want to, again, comment on the issue around flexibility that Commissioner Wall and others have just talked about, that this is what I said in the beginning in the comments, is that we are trying to determine as many reasonable pathways as we can in our purview. These are going to change. What we have decided is reasonable now may not be reasonable 6 months from now. And that is why we are constantly looking at these issues. In that vein, several things have come up that we wouldn't have expected before. The CBEST issue certainly highlights a big problem. And it is something that we can't take action on here at this moment, but it is a big problem that we're aware of. The CSET issue is also a problem that we're aware of. Regarding the CSET and the CBEST, something that the Commission has been working towards for a long time on these exam routes are other course option routes. We're moving to a place where each of our exams, like the CSET, the CBEST, will have options, other options. We do have subject matter preparation programs for the CSET, but we are looking at other ways and have been working on other ways that coursework can be done in lieu of some of these exams for retakes, for instance. Obviously, we didn't move fast enough. We didn't expect this to happen at this moment in time, and this exacerbates the timeline, but we're running as fast as we can on some of these. I just want you all to know that. The other thing that we are doing at this moment is relying on the expertise of the experts, and you will see more of that in the next item. The other thing that we are highly aware of is that candidates are not incurring additional costs. We're well aware that this is not something that we want to have happen, and we're trying to put together solutions that will minimize that, if not eliminate. The variable term waiver, we can see that there are many needs for extensive communication to the field and to candidates around that. The issues with interns and intern documents versus variable term waiver documents certainly highlights that issue. It was a question I had coming into this. And we have to be sure that interns aren't unfairly discriminated against in some way simply because there was a misunderstanding about where things stand. So we have to be sure that everybody understands what these are. And we acknowledge, regardless, that there are limitations on the variable term waiver option, real limitations. The final thing that I would like to say is I appreciate the offers of supports to new teachers that some of our stakeholders came forward. We had Mr. Johnson from LAUSD offer support for new teachers going into the field. This is one of the things from the very beginning we have been trying to highlight. Our new teachers and administrators missed out on a very large part of their preparation this spring. This is the time for most programs of teaching preparation programs where teachers, potential teachers, are spending nearly full time in their student teaching placements and really engaging deeply in the practice of enacting teaching. They lost that this time. You heard from our teacher candidates on the line how many of them are simply trying to support the students who are out there that they're worried about with their mental health, with everything else. They didn't have the option to do all the things that we would like them to do and that they would like to do. One of the really big things we have to understand is the kinds of supports that they are going to need when they go into teaching in the fall, especially under these variable term waivers. We have had support from our induction providers, our induction community, to do some of these supports. We have everybody, our higher education liaisons, our teachers, have all been very concerned about the kinds of supports the new teachers would have. Everybody wants them to have the right supports because we need that for kids and we need it for them. We know that well-prepared teachers stay in the profession longer. So it is just one of these guiding principles that I can continue to consider in coming up with and thinking about the solutions that we make. And I want to thank everybody on here for thinking carefully and offering those kinds of supports.
Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Tina, for those really articulate and helpful focus as we're trying to do this. And I really appreciate Anna Maria and Andrew's observations as well. The thing that I'm thinking about too is, as a faculty member who's been working with students and student teachers as we made this really quite remarkable shift, it really has been the speakers that talked about taking care and dealing with social emotional needs has been an issue for both the professors that are trying to support the student teachers right now, as well as every single student teacher and credential teacher working with children and with families. The guiding principles that we build now will also always need a relook, because the future normal may very well include virtual teaching and distance teaching by classroom teachers in a way we've never ever done before. That to me is the future normal. We need to address today's new normal. So thanks, Tina.
Are there any other questions or comments by commissioners? Commissioner Rodriguez?
Thank you so much, Commissioner Kung. And I'd like to acknowledge all of the people who spoke and to let you know that I hear you and I feel you, especially those of you who are taking over a classroom and you're dealing with the sadness and the shock that students are going through. It broke my heart as I was listening to you, especially the voices that cracked as you were talking about what your students are going through and how hard breaking that connection has been. And that said, this item, as I'll echo what's already been said, has outlined what we can do and what we're limited based on statutes, right? That we don't have any control over. And I think, powerlessness has sort of been the word that is, since March 17th, when our school closed, or when this pandemic broke out, that I've just felt absolutely powerless about so many things, my students, their well-being, what's happening here. And, for everyone who spoke, I heard you not only with my ears, but with my heart. And I want you to understand that, the decisions that we're making are, again, we're doing everything that we can to support the people who are supporting you on this path to becoming better teachers. My heart breaks about, where our hands are tied with the CBEST, the people who have failed, who, won't be able to be part of the waiver or this particular waiver. And again, our hands are tied with that. And I also want to address Eleanor Scott, who talked about, the CSET not necessarily being what it is that makes you a good teacher. And I believe it's the part of the content, right? The pedagogical content knowledge. So we want to know that you have a baseline of knowledge and that you, and then the pedagogy, how you teach it. And I acknowledge that, that it's that human connection, it's that humanization of the words of the writers and the canon, as you said, that is actually what makes us great teachers, that human connection, which now, takes me to our TPAs. We've worked very hard to have TPAs that, as much as possible, reflect that you're able to go into a classroom and be prepared to teach our students. And, as someone who's not colonized, I really, don't see these tests, right? There aren't any assessments that are perfect, but we have really worked hard on making sure that these are quality assessments for teachers where you can show us what you know. It's not a multiple choice, right? It's your portfolios. And as a national board certified teacher, I really feel that this is a step. It's a step toward that gold standard where you're constantly reflecting on your practice. And so, I agree that there aren't assessments that are perfect. I do know that with all of the thought and all of the work that we've put into the TPAs, it really feels to me, as we've gone through the TPEs and then the TPAs, that this is the best that we've got. So I do encourage you to keep working, because I can't think of a better profession than the profession that I'm in. And please don't be discouraged. Based on what we're going through right now, because we need you a lot. Thank you.
Sorry, trying to push the unmute button. And thank you. Any other commissioners have questions or comments? Okay. Well, I too just want to thank all the speakers, both written and spoken. I too heard everyone, and but I think we need to move on. This is an action item. Do I have a motion to approve the recommended actions as presented in items 3A and 3A insert? I guess Commissioner Klatz. I have a motion by Commissioner Klatz and a second by Commissioner Sloan. I think that's what I see. Further discussion.
As process, do you, I think I heard at the beginning that you needed us to restate the motion. Is that something you need me to do at this point?
I think let's hold for staff.
Yeah, could we have staff?
I just checked with General Counsel. You are able to take action on a motion as framed by the chairman to move forward all of the recommendations as presented by staff, and the agenda item is sufficient.
Okay, and so that would be my motion to move staff, what the staff recommended. There's 4 points there. So as written in the item.
Okay, thank you. And we already had the second by Commissioner Sloan. Again, further discussion? Yes, Commissioner Klatt. Commissioner Klatt.
There we go. I clicked the wrong one. Add that, as many of the other commissioners have stated, this is what I feel like this staff has given us what we can do now, but it doesn't mean that we can't continue as things unfold to address some of the things that our speakers presented to us. And this is the beginning, I think.
Thank you. Any other commissioner discussions, questions, comments? Okay, then seeing none, will the recording secretary call for the vote?
Kathleen Olivey.
Aye.
Kirsten Barnes.
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney. C. Michael Cooney. Yes. Michael, do you want to just wave hands, say aye? Indicate your aye because we can't hear you. Commissioner Cooney? Okay. I'm going to come back with his vote. Marisol Del Toro Escobedo?
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney? No, okay. Johanna Harwick?
Aye.
Alicia Hine?
Aye.
Terry Jackson?
Aye.
Bonnie Clark?
Aye.
Kevin Quinn?
Aye.
Jane Marks? Jim Marks? Cynthia Martin?
Aye.
Monica Martinez?
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez?
Aye.
David Simmons?
Aye.
Tina Slow?
Aye. And I believe my Commissioner Cooney is trying to call in at this moment, it appears.
On phone, if you'd like to call for him again.
C. Michael Cooney?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a motion carries.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Scubel. Having no additional items today, I adjourn the Appeals and Waivers Committee.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you, Erin. Before we move to the Educator Preparation Committee, I think we need a 10-minute break. So we will resume again. My clock says 11:07, so let's try for 11:17, please. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I'm just going to assume that those whose faces we cannot see yet are probably just gobbling down their last snacks. And so we do have Commissioner Rodriguez, who is here and ready to go, as always. So next is the Educator Preparation Committee. Commissioner Rodriguez, will you please convene the committee?
With pleasure, thank you. I'd like to call the April 2020 meeting of the Educator Preparation Committee to order. We have 5 agenda items. 3 of the items are scheduled for today, and with 2 more tomorrow morning. I would like to remind members of the public who wish to speak on a specific item to please email your request to comments@ctc.ca.gov or call 916-322-6253. I'll repeat, comments@ctc.ca.gov or the number 916-322-6253. And indicate which item you wish to speak to so we can call your name during the appropriate time. Please make sure that the request includes your full name, phone number if you're participating through phone only, your affiliation, and the agenda item number and title. Make sure the name you provide matches the name used to join the meeting. The meeting host will call your name and unmute your microphone to allow you to share your comments. After you finish your comment, the microphone will be muted by the meeting host. Okay, so again, this is item 4A, flexibility for commission-approved educator preparation programs due to the COVID-19 crisis. This item is being presented by Terry Clark, and this is an action item. Ms. Clark, will you please begin?
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. This agenda item is also about options related to the COVID health and safety restrictions. But in this item, staff has approached these issues from the Commission-approved program side. The number and variety of programs that Commission-approved institutions may offer actually exceeds 40. It includes initial teacher preparation, initial administrator preparation, induction for both teachers and administrators, the pupil personnel services, including school counseling, school social work, school psychology, school nurse, teacher librarian, bilingual authorization, as well as a variety of smaller added authorization or specialist programs. Some of these programs are a year or less in length, up to the 3-year programs that are traditional for both school psychology and school counseling. Candidates also often enroll in these programs on a full-time basis, and some other candidates enroll on a part-time basis. Of course, the part-time candidates take longer to complete the program than the timelines I already gave you. This is all to explain to you that it's actually not a very simple process to understand which candidates were on target to complete their Commission-approved Educator preparation program in spring-summer of 2020. The best estimate we have, based on prior credential year recommendations and on your accreditation data system, is that somewhere around 26,000 individuals were scheduled to complete a program this spring-summer. As you've already heard this morning, some credential requirements are set by the legislature and appear in the Education Code. Some requirements have been set by the Commission and been placed into Title V regulations, thereby the requirement is in law. But other requirements are set by Commission action, and your adopted program standards is an example of this. Staff has completed a thorough analysis of which credential requirement is based on each of these actions, and as you've already heard, you may only modify the ones that have been put in place by your action and are also not in Ed Code or Title V regulation. In the prior item that you just had, staff recommended and you took action to align in alignment with the Education Code and Title V regulations. You allowed deferral of the basic skills requirement for both candidates and applicants. You allowed reissuance of credentials due to the extraordinary circumstances, and you approved preparation programs to be able to recommend their candidates who just need additional time to complete their program requirements a variable term waiver, which will allow the individual to find employment in their field as they finish their credential requirements. And as you've talked about, these are not perfect solutions, but they're things you've been able to act on now. So this item provides some options for you to consider related to the credential requirements that are in your adopted program standards. The Commission's adopted program standards define what a program must provide for candidates and what it must ensure that candidates know and are able to do at the completion of that program to be eligible to be recommended for the credential that they were prepared for. The Commission standards rarely specify how the program must accomplish the what. There is a couple notable exceptions. Candidates, how they demonstrate subject matter, how candidates are formally assessed through a performance assessment, those requirements are actually defined the what and the how. And as was pointed out earlier, both subject matter and the performance assessment requirements are in law. The Commission cannot waive or postpone those at this time. But most other program aspects, including how do they configure the courses? What assignments do the candidates complete? How does clinical practice get integrated into the coursework? How are candidates formatively assessed throughout the program? How are they given feedback? All of these attributes of a program are up to the program sponsor as long as the candidate has the prescribed knowledge and skills that are defined in the performance expectations at the end of the program, and as long as all of the processes are within the parameters defined in your program standards. So in March, as the COVID crisis started, staff provided guidance to programs. How could programs think about the Commission's requirements in creative ways that could include things like virtual or remote teaching, remote clinical practice? This guidance was designed to explain how programs could adapt while staying within the lines that have been drawn by your adopted program standards. So this item identifies areas where the Commission could consider for the COVID-impacted completers who were expected to complete their program between March and September 1st of this year, 2020, to actually modify the lines in the standards. Staff has developed some specific recommendations, 11 of them actually. And we've based these recommendations on information gathered from program questions, candidate questions and requests, analysis of your standards, and best practice information that's available for each of these credential areas. I do want to point out in the area of the very specialized credentials, such as school psychology, school counseling, school social work, and speech-language pathology, staff also reviewed the COVID-19 flexibilities that have been identified by the appropriate national association. Each of those credentials has a national association, and your standards are very close to the national association. Those associations came out in March with some guidance related to COVID, and that was considered as this item was prepared. So commission-approved educator preparation programs are monitored by the Commission's accreditation system. Programs have already been asked to document any modifications that they are implementing due to COVID in no more than about 5 pages. And this documentation will be retained by that program for review during accreditation activities. So that's the way we will know which modifications are made. The remainder of this item is organized by specific credential program area, and we'll walk through it together through each of the credential areas. The challenging aspects of the program standards that were identified and the specific recommendation that staff concluded to be most appropriate in these very unusual circumstances. I want to remind you one more time again that these flexibilities are being suggested only for candidates who are scheduled to complete the program between March 19th and September 1st of this year. We would be coming back at a later date to talk about future candidates. The first area of recommendations has to do with the general education, preliminary teacher preparation, multiple and single subject candidates. There actually are 4 recommendations for this type of credential. And I do want to give you a little bit of context. Prior to 2016, when your current standards were adopted, preparation programs had the majority of the responsibility for each of these 4 topics that I'm going to talk about. The program decided if the candidate had had enough of some specific practice or some type of feedback or some type of teaching experience. And so most of these recommendations really rely on that fact that that's how programs used to work and a recommendation that we move back towards that. The first item is the multiple and single subject programs candidates are required to complete 600 hours of clinical practice. That is in your standards. And we've given you 2 options here, and you could look at the 2 options together if you wish. One option is you could just reduce the number of clinical practice hours. 600 was decided on back in 2016 because of nationwide research into what most states were doing, and the fact that when you adopted the current standards, you said clinical practice is a high leverage area. You wanted to ensure quality clinical practice was taking place. So recommendation A is you could reduce the number of hours. You could reduce it by a specific amount, or you could reduce it by allowing programs to determine if sufficient clinical practice has been completed by each candidate. I also want to point out that all preliminary teacher candidates, as they leave their program, they develop an individual development plan. It identifies the strengths of that candidate, key areas for growth for that candidate, and the candidate takes that individual development plan with them to their induction program. And in the item we talk about that the individual development plan for each candidate should clearly identify modifications and areas for induction, so the induction program has the most informed ability to support that candidate. The second idea for the 600 hours is you could, in addition to just saying either there's fewer hours or the program may decide, is you could actually say if a candidate has passed the TPA, that for this year's candidates only, that's adequate. Or they could have even a fewer number of clinical practice hours. So recommendations A and B all have to do with the 600 hours of clinical practice. Staying within multiple and single subject. You also require in your standards that each candidate be formally observed, and the formal observation has to do with the supervisor coming in, writing up what they're seeing, having a formal conversation with the candidate, assessing the candidate on the TPEs, and giving them guidance. And your standards require that if it's a semester program, that's 6 times per semester or 4 times each quarter, these formal observations take place. We've already guided programs that you can formally observe your candidate if they are doing remote teaching. That can work. But on top of that, there still are concerns that 6 times per semester, 4 times per quarter, it may not make sense in today's educational world. So we're suggesting that you allow the program to determine if the candidate has had sufficient formal observations, thereby for this group of candidates only, eliminating the specified numbers of formal observations. The third area, and recommendation D, has to do with the requirement for preliminary multiple and single subject candidates that they complete 4 weeks of solo student teaching. And we've already helped programs think about solo teaching is when a candidate plans the lesson, delivers the lesson, grades the student work, analyzes the student work in the lesson, and uses it to plan future lessons. So we tried to help programs understand that it might be possible that some of the earlier work that a candidate has done could be counted partly as solo teaching. There still is the fact, though, that some candidates are going to have trouble meeting 4 weeks of solo teaching. So in this recommendation, we're recommending that going back to pre the 2016 standards, you say to programs that the 4 weeks is not a requirement for these candidates. You use your best judgment and determine if a candidate has had sufficient solo teaching practice. Again, all of these would be documented on the individual development plan if a modification had taken place and would move with that candidate to their induction program. The second credential area is the preliminary education specialist teacher preparation. And although you did adopt new program standards that will be taking effect in the 2022-23 school year, programs are still operating under the standards that were adopted between 2008 and 2010. Those standards are much less specific. But one of the things the standards do talk about and that programs let us know are challenges to them is that special ed candidates are supposed to have clinical practice across the grade levels and across the types of settings that their credential authorizes. And that with this remote teaching change on the spur of the moment, it may not be possible for all candidates to have done that. So the recommendation E is to allow programs to determine, has a candidate had sufficient experience across grade levels and settings? Special ed candidates also take a professional development plan from their preliminary program to their induction program. And the idea there is, again, this would be documented in this document, and the induction program would be aware of the modification. The fifth recommendation, the sixth recommendation, recommendation F, is about preliminary teacher candidates for next year. And it became clear to us that, as you've already heard, CSET is an issue for some candidates, but if a candidate gets into a program and subject matter CSETs are not available, our current preconditions, precondition 6 for multiple and single subject and precondition 3 specify that a candidate must meet subject matter before they can be responsible for daily whole class instruction. If the testing centers are not available and candidates can't meet their subject matter, but they are in a student teaching-based program, it doesn't seem appropriate to restrict them from being able to move into the student teaching practice. So what we're saying is for incoming candidates only for the 2021 year, that precondition would be waived so that student teachers would be able to start their daily whole class instruction. In residency programs, that happens very early. And if a candidate hasn't been able to meet their subject matter requirement, officially it would not be able to happen. So we're recommending that you waive precondition 6 and precondition 3. I'm going to pause there because we're moving to induction next. Recommendations G and H are about induction for both teachers and administrators. The induction community, as soon as this COVID started to occur, was contacting us routinely to say, oh my gosh, are we going to have our candidates do 3 more months or 4 more months of induction next year? And we talked with the institutions and we said, talk to us about what you're doing. And their comments were, the new teachers or new administrators, they're still meeting with their mentors and coaches. The mentors and coaches are doing more now to help them think about moving to remote education. And so after the conversation, staff has come up with a recommendation that the 2019-20 school year is a year for induction candidates. If an induction candidate was on target to complete their program in spring, summer of 2020, they should still complete it. That doesn't mean if a candidate has not been meeting with their mentor, hasn't been participating in the program, that the candidate gets a complete pass. This is still only for candidates who were on target to be completed this year. This recommendation H has to do with the people coming into induction next year, especially if there are people on variable term waivers. There's a precondition for teacher induction that says you may only accept people into your program that hold preliminary credentials. Well, if we have a number of people out teaching next year on variable term waivers and they still have a little bit of their preliminary preparation to complete, most likely finishing a TPA, it does not make sense to prohibit them from being in the program that can provide them support and guidance. The other thing we're going to talk about with induction programs is it doesn't make any sense to require the candidate to try to be a new teacher in very unknown circumstances, work on your TPA that you haven't finished, possibly work on a RECA if you haven't finished it, and do your induction inquiries. What we want to talk with the institutions about is that induction is to support the candidate where they are and help them grow. If a candidate still needs to finish their performance assessment, that's where they are. And the performance assessment is good teaching. So help them with that requirement, and that is their induction for that part of their program. So we're not suggesting that the induction program be extended for these candidates, but we are asking you to waive preconditions that say you must hold a preliminary credential to begin induction. Recommendations I and J both have to do with those very specialized credentials. And we went, again, as I said, to the National Association. We've given you some information on pages 7, 8, and 9 of your agenda item. The National Association in each case has already identified some flexibilities. And so what we would like you to take action to do is to say, yes, the National Association's flexibilities make sense. We think commission programs should align with those national guidance for flexibilities, and programs should make the determination about when a candidate has had sufficient clinical practice. There's a few situations where there are specified hours in the regulations. Those cannot be waived, but other than the areas with specialized hours in the regulations, this would allow the program to make the determination. If a candidate was not able to be in the two settings, for example, of 100 hours each, that candidate might have to be on a variable term waiver for the beginning of the year. They would be employed as an educator. As soon as they met the required hours in the regulations, the program would recommend them for their preliminary credentials. So that should not take anywhere near a year. The final topical area has to do with the administrator performance assessment. Last August, you took action at a commission meeting to set a passing standard for the Cal APA for this year. You also directed staff to prepare for a standard setting study this spring, which was going to be taking place next month. The world has turned on its head. We cannot do a standard setting study next month. So what we're asking you to do is to take action to say, please postpone the standard setting study until spring of 2021 and extend the current passing standard for the 2021 school year. That would allow administrator candidates to still be prepared and to have that check for the current APA passing standard. If you go to page 10 of your item, you will actually see a summary of recommendations A through K. We recommend you approve all of the recommendations in the item. If you were to take action on any or all of those recommendations, staff would disseminate that information to all commission-approved educator preparation programs and educators who contact us. The Professional Services Division is already working with certification, and we've planned some webinars that will take place within 10 days of today's meeting, specifically for types of programs. Preliminary teaching programs has a date and time. Teacher induction has a date and time. Admin induction has a date and time. And the Pupil Personnel Services and Speech Language Pathology program has a date and time. And at those settings, we would then share whichever of the recommendations you were to approve or modify and then approve, and we would answer questions from programs to help programs understand. I do want to remind again that any modifications that are made would be documented in this document that the program does retain, and that it would be monitored during the accreditation system. And so if I can answer any questions, I'll be happy to.
Thank you so much, Terry, and as always for being so precise in your breakdown of this. And as Terry said, there are 11 recommendations. So after public comment, commissioners, we're going to go through each recommendation, and you'll say if you agree or if you make a recommendation for a modification on that. All right, so we'll now open for public comment, and because we do have a large number of individuals wishing to speak to the commission today, you're going to be provided 1 minute to make your comment. And there is a timer, and so if you can see the timer, just be aware of that. And you'll get a warning right before, so you can wrap up your last sentence. So recording secretary, are there any public comments at this time?
Yes, there are. The first speaker, Mari Gray.
Thank you, commissioners, for your efforts to develop a plan for California's educators and your responsiveness to the educational community. CAPIA supports action item 4A, the postponement of Cal APA standard setting for an additional year, as this fits with our request to the governor that the Cal APA be suspended for this consequential year. The reason we oppose action item 3A. Unlike student teachers and interns, past candidates are employed full-time in positions with responsibilities of teaching and caring for members of the community that must take precedence over the Cal APA cycles. Many candidates don't go directly into admin and would not have access to an induction program support. The VTW imposes an estimated additional cost of $10,000 to the candidates who are continuing into induction. Finally, the VTW imposes an unfunded mandate to CTC's credentialing partners, who will bear the additional expense of supporting both candidates who are completing its terms and preparing new past candidates in the fall.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next is Terrence Cow. Please state your name and affiliation for the record.
Hello, Terrence Cow. I'm speaking on behalf of Pepperdine University in the role of the certification manager. First of all, I just want to thank the commission for putting in this time to figure out what flexibilities and other waivers we might be able to have for our candidates. In particular, I just want to address some of the provisions in place for the subject matter requirement. It is good to see that there is a consideration for waiving the requirement, at least for applicants of the 2020 to 2021 school year, but there are some concerns for some of our candidates who are in the undergraduate pathway of the program where, being unable to take this test and having to continue classes at a later time might disrupt not just their teacher preparation, but also just their plans for college. So I'm just wondering, what else the commission, besides this requirement, might have heard in terms of testing windows or other alternative forms of fulfilling the requirement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next, Olivia Castaneda.
Okay. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone. I hadn't planned to talk in this session, but I would also say that it will affect all teachers who are like all student teachers who are graduating, because in my personal situation, my mentor teacher said that teaching was very different. So I cannot even have virtual teaching with my students that I already had built relationships with. So this will affect everyone in teaching and with evaluations. So thank you for your leadership again, and for those of you who had said about not passing the test, just keep on trying. I failed it about 10 times, my CSET, and just continue with your professional development. And And thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Next.
Next is Marcia Russell.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Marcia.
I'm the Director of Teacher and Administrator Induction at Ventura County Office of Education. We lead teacher and administrator induction, designated subjects, OI, and LAD programs, both online and face-to-face. We strongly support the proposed flexibility for teacher and administrator induction programs in Agenda Item 4A and encourage you to approve those. While not ideal, at a minimum, we appreciate the opportunity in the fall for new induction candidates who are on VTWs to complete their Cal TPA as their induction individual learning plan. We're confident we can collaborate with our IHE partners to adequately support candidates through this process. And given this necessary collaboration, we look forward to more detailed guidance and training from CTC on the best ways to prepare our induction mentors to support candidates with the completion of their TPA during induction. This is especially important because induction mentors are not familiar with TPA requirements. Thank you for your consideration, and we appreciate all of your hard work and proactive communication.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Next, Danette Brown. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hi, Danette.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay! My name is Danette Brown. I'm an elementary teacher in La Habra, California, and I'm speaking today representing the California Teachers Association. And it's so good to see your faces. The California Teachers Association supports all of the recommendations before you today, and we just have to say a big thank you to the commission and the staff for your amazing work on this Herculean effort. We do have one clarifying comment about the 600 hours of clinical practice regarding options A and B. And I believe what I heard Terry explain is that an option might be A and B, because in the item it just says A or B. And I'd just like to say that we would support A and B together, because we feel like as much flexibility and options that we have right now, and like was expressed by commissioners previously, that we can continue to have conversations on further matters. So as much flexibility as we can afford right now, we think would be a great thing. Thank you so much. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you, Danette. Great hearing your voice. Next speaker.
Next is Martha Gunter.
Hear me now?
Yes, Martha, we can hear you.
Thank you. I was wondering, would there be a way?
Martha, could you please state your full name and affiliation for the record?
Sure, I'm Martha Gunter. I am a teacher in Norwalk, California for a private school.
Okay, thank you.
And I just finished my master's program last year.
Okay.
And I was wondering if there would be a way to consider principal evaluations and work experience in terms of deferring at least one CSET.
So while this is public comment, we will take that because you're asking a question. So we will discuss that during our discussion. All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. So Martha, before you go, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Just to clarify, principal observations to consider that somehow with regard to the hours. Is that what you were?
So yes, so principal evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Also take into consideration people that have already a master's degree. Yeah, that's what I was asking about.
Okay.
And in general, like work experience, like those of us that have put in more than 5 years of teaching.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Angelica Montes.
Hi, I'm sorry. I the only time I really spoke was with the last 3A.
I'm sorry, Angelica, did you want to speak again?
No, I'm actually kind of confused. I'm just listening.
So were you on the list for you? Because you spoke during the last item. I remember that.
Yes. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I could just say again, I just want to thank the commission for listening to our voices. Again, just as a UC Davis multiple subjects teaching credential student, I'm hearing a lot of voices, and I do want to remind the commission that we teach in your communities, especially since I'm so close to Sacramento, and just to have a heart to hopefully help all of those in need and think of a more equitable situation, to make everything equitable for those who, at the end of the day, this is all geared for our students that we serve in the state of California. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next comment.
Next is Lynn Scott.
Good morning, commissioners. Again, this is Lynn Scott. I'm the president of COBTE. Again, I assume you will approve the staff recommendations in 4A as you did in 3A. I want to again emphasize equity. While you're pushing the VTW into the next year, I am not convinced that induction programs will be given the appropriate support to help teacher candidates. Now we're talking about losing candidates in the coming years because of this. So I want to make sure that you are considering equity. We need to retain teachers in the field who reflect the backgrounds of the students before them. Equity means, for example, giving Commissioner Cooney the ability to vote by chat, or having a meeting with him prior so that he has access to the Zoom functions. So I really want to emphasize
you want to wrap up
equity first.
Okay, thank you. All right, next public comment.
Next is Kelly Agner.
Hello.
Hi, welcome, Kelly.
My name is Kelly Agner. I am a TPA coordinator in Southern California with Mount St. Mary's University. And I appreciate all the flexibility as part of a program. This is going to be key to us supporting our students. My comment is that I do ask the team there to please continue to pursue the legislative and executive actions that might waive TPA for candidates that are completing and filing during spring 2020 and potentially into fall 2020, as we don't know what fall will bring. Although TPA is authentic and better than most assessments, it wasn't designed for a primarily online situation. And it definitely didn't take into effect the uneven access to internet devices and applications. The prescriptive video clips are hijacking some of the precious time that our candidates are having with their students, particularly the young students. And so we don't want TPA to be the reason why the K-12 students are suffering.
Thank you. Next public comment.
John Borba, please state your name and affiliation.
Welcome, Dr. Borba.
Excuse me. John Borba, professor of school administration, Cal State Stanislaus. I wish to speak to the issue of Cal APA scoring for the next academic year. I support the recommendation for continuing with the Cal APA cutoff scores, passing scores for the 2020-2021 school year. Candidates now in school administration, they're using a variety of creative ways to complete their APA cycles, but it's not the same. Typically, as you know, activities like peer coaching and professional learning communities are done in person. And online activities can't match the quality of in-person activities completed in person. And so in the name of equity, I ask you to please approve the recommendation on maintaining the current passing scores on the Cal APA for continuing with them throughout the 2021 academic year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Brandy Sanchez. Please state your name and affiliation.
Brandy Sanchez. I'm a teacher at a charter school in Southern California.
Can you speak up just a little bit, Brandy?
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Hi. I'm a teacher at a charter school in Southern California. My question goes back to addressing CSETs for student teaching. Will that also go towards students who are trying to intern teach and are hindered with taking CSETs that can't be taken right now?
So we can, if Terry would like to answer that, or we can discuss that during the, since it is a question.
Either way. I'll just state that the requirement for an intern to have passed and satisfied the subject matter requirement is not under the commission's purview to change without some additional assistance from either an executive order or some legislation. And that's one of the things that we're talking with administration, legislators about. So it is being discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Next is Arlene Acosta.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Arlene Acosta. I'm a substitute teacher who has already utilized the allotted permits to teach in the classroom while being a credential candidate. I have a master's in education currently. I've already taught in the classroom for 3 years and have continued as a substitute teacher as I attempt to pass the CSETs. Can it be taken into consideration district recommendations such as teacher evaluations for moving on to university district internships, as I only have one subtest to pass and have not been able to do because of the closures of the testing centers. Meanwhile, until, well, maybe given a waiver as well, and then once centers open up, we have a time frame to pass tests. Because it just does not make practical sense to me that I've already been a teacher. My district, my principal is completely satisfied with my work.
Okay, Arlene, I'm going to cut you off. You're a little over your minute.
Okay.
We'll discuss this because somebody raised this issue. So when the commissioners take this into consideration and we go through the recommendations, we will bring this up. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
Next is Julie Sheldon. Please state your name and affiliation.
Hi, my name is Julie Sheldon, and I'm the coordinator of the Walnut Valley Induction Consortium. And I would like to thank the Commission and CTC staff for all of their hard work and their focus on supporting teachers in this challenging time. I am in full support of Action 4A, and I would like to ask that if it is passed, that there be additional guidance provided for both induction programs and teacher prep programs regarding finding the TPA process and the IIP. We want to make sure we're not doubling up requirements on these candidates and ensure that they're not overburdened and get the support that they need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, and I see Terry Clark nodding her head. So we're usually very good about, excellent actually, about guidance and providing support. So next public comment.
Renee Hall, please state your name and affiliation.
My name is Renee Hall, and I'm a special education teacher in the Central Valley. My comment is that I have heard that you are differing the requirements for the CSET for student teachers, and I think this has been discussed before, but my concern is for intern eligible candidates at this time. My program that I am currently trying to get into is only an intern program, and they are not allowing us to enter without having the CSETs completed. And at this time, I only have one left, and I just like that to be taken into consideration, that with the test centers being closed, we're unable to meet those requirements, and people are losing their jobs due to it. So I thank you for your consideration and your time.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Next public comment.
Rachel Engelskircher. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Please state your name and affiliation.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Engelskircher, and I am a current teacher credential candidate at UC Davis. As teacher credential candidates who want the best for our students and are eager to be in the classroom next year, we ask the CTC be flexible with the current requirements. Next year, as first-year educators, we will be working with students, as you all know, who have endured significant amounts of trauma due to this pandemic. Having the additional stress of completing an assessment that does not truly measure the quality of teachers would be unfair to us in our first year of teaching, even if it is part of the induction program. The opportunity to complete the EdTPA virtually, while flexible, does not take into account the inequities that exist in our communities, specifically with access to technology. I understand that it is not within the purview of the CTC to waive the EdTPA and CalTPA, and therefore strongly recommend that the Commission communicate the request to Governor Newsom to issue an executive order to waive the EdTPA and CalTPA this year and permanently. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment.
Is Marlene Ferry online?
Hello. There she is. Hello, Marlene.
Hi.
Your affiliation for the record.
Okay, my name is Marlene Ferry, and I actually am a current credential candidate at Western Governors University and also a substitute teacher in the Central Valley. And I just wanted to comment that I am not set to do my student teaching until this fall. But I have completed my CBEST and all of the requirements, even my courses, except for my CSET. And I'm asking and I'm urging the Commission to allow waivers for CSET temporarily until this pandemic is over, basically, so that we can get through our program and also consider other options to fulfill the CSET, as many people I know are struggling to pass and have taken it many times and spent even upwards of $1,500 and still have not passed this exam. I have 2 bachelor's degrees and 2 AA degrees already. I've been substitute teaching since 2017, and my heart is in this, and I really want this career just along with many other people. And I'm just urging you to maybe add courses to fulfill CSET or some other way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public speaker.
The next individual has a hand raised. Mr. Spencer, if you could please state your first and last name and your affiliation for the record.
Yes, my name is Mark Spencer, and I am a math teacher in the Central Valley. And I am currently on a STIP, and I have a CSET to complete in order to become intern eligible for next year. However, after I registered for my CSAT, I was refunded my money based on the pandemic and not being able to take the test. So my question is there a way that STIP could be extended a year so that we're able to still take the test and get the time allotted that we were supposed to have to take the test prior to having to be internment?
So it's public comment right now. We won't entertain questions, but we will go through, use this during the discussion, Mr. Spencer.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Next public speaker.
We have another raised hand, Joy Kutata Kennedy.
Close. Joy Kutaka Kennedy. Hello. Joy Kutaka Kennedy. Good morning. Thank you. Or, yeah, still all afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. I know you have discussed this in a number of different ways, and it's regarding interns and the variable term waivers, and how can we, as your public behind you, oh, by the way, I am a professor at National University.
Thank you.
And my question is, or my comment is, how can we get, government action, meaning if you can talk to Governor Newsom and get a change in the regulations, or not regulations, but a temporary bridge so that our interns can move forward. And so that our interns can, they're hired, they're in the classrooms, they're doing the best they can, like regular, fully, preliminary or clear credential teachers, but they don't have the same options that they do, or even student teachers. So how can we get that to happen? What can we as the public do? Should we flood the governor or you guys with emails and letters saying, please attend to this issue? Because it is critical to the livelihood and survival of our interns serving their kids. And we don't want to make things so hard, especially in special education where I am, that the teachers go away, that our special ed teachers give up, or, just leave the field. And it's so hard as it is to address the severe and persistent shortage and expertise in special ed. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, thank you. And we have discussed that, and we will discuss that. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Joseph Robinson.
Hi, my name is Joseph Robinson. I was a teacher candidate back in 2018 for a multiple subjects credential. I had a little bit of a unique pathway. I finished most of my requirements. I took my CSET and CBEST and both passed, and I actually finished my student teaching experience as well. I took a private sector job immediately afterwards and never got around to taking the RECA exam. So I'm asking the commission to provide some clarity on two things. A, I haven't heard a lot about the RECA exam, mostly the CSET and the CBEST, and also some clarity on teacher candidates from prior years who may not have passed their exams. I've heard a bit about the current crop of people doing their student teaching experiences, but not those who may have taken them in past years, but haven't met one or two of the requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a minute. Next speaker, I think it's Janelle King.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Janelle King. I'm with Rocket Ship Education. I'm a credential analyst there. I know the CSET is a common concern for many teachers, in particular intern candidates right now. I know that the CTC cannot take action on that directly, but I think everyone would like clarity on how the commission will be proposing an executive order to Governor Newsom and what that executive order would be from the commission what your suggestions would be and how you would be delivering that directly to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That was a good public comment. All right. That little scream at the end. Yes. Do we have any more public comments?
Yes, I'm going to call some names of requests that were submitted by email earlier. And if you're on the line or on Zoom, please raise your hand. Andrew Duong. Joshua Emler. Ogechi Ibianusi. Tricia Gallagher Jertson. Richard Ayers. Miguel Zavala. Sheridan Kotzman. Ruchi Ragnot. Commissioner Rodriguez, I'm not seeing any other requests for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Yes, a few of those names were names that spoke on the last item, like the last three that you mentioned. So maybe there was a misunderstanding. Okay, well, so if there are no public comments, then this item is now closed, and we will go ahead and open it up for questions or comments, commissioners, that you may have on these items. And I'll also, before we get started on breaking down these 11 items, because we'll talk on each one individually, there were a few questions that were asked by the public comments, and would this be a good time, which aren't part of these items, a good time to address the concerns about whether it was the RICA? Can we talk about it if it's not part of this item, or the governor? Good.
Madam Chair, I believe we need to focus on the topic of this item.
Okay.
That's the item that's advertised for discussion and action by the commission.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted clarification because those comments did come in, and wanted to acknowledge that this is the item that we have at hand on our agenda. Okay, so commissioners, we're going to start with A, which is the 600 hours. So this is something that did come up. The 600 hours, A and B. Terry, could you, I think it was Danette who asked about clarification on whether we could do an A and B.
In my description, A is the idea in A is you could reduce the number from 600 to a specific number, or you could just say programs will make the determination. B also allows you to take an additional action if you wish to say if a person has passed the TPA, maybe even that specific number of hours is not necessary. So they're connected. You could put them together. It's your choice.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we'll open it up for commissioner comments and questions on A, the 600 hours. And I'm looking for, let's see, I see a hand just went up. And that is Commissioner Greneau-Shire.
Thank you, Commissioner Rodriguez. Terry, I just
want to confirm, because I think this is really important, we can do both A and B, or to allow programs the greatest flexibility. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Sloan?
Then I want to follow up with Commissioner Grenoshire's question to say there are two parts to each of these. One is we could determine a number of hours to reduce, or we can give the programs the capacity to determine within the programs and what they do and what the candidates have demonstrated and what the candidates have done, whether in their opinion candidates are ready to move on into the next phase, right? So we have those choices, a specified number of hours, or programs make a determination. And with B, there is that additional option that taken together, let's say we decide a program should have the opportunity to determine, based on where their candidates are, the kinds of student teaching situations their candidates have been in the sports, et cetera, that as well as the TPA in totality allows them to make the determination for each of their candidates, which is actually what I would be supportive of.
Commissioner Grenoshirer?
As would I. The three parts that Commissioner Sloan just described give our programs the greatest flexibility, and also acknowledge their professionalism in making these decisions. So if I could make a motion, it would include all of those.
Okay, so we're not on the motion yet. We're going to go and break all of these down, but it's very important to have the comments on this item so that we can see where the agreement is, if there's any disagreement, so we can discuss that. Let's see. I'm looking for other comments here. I don't see any hands up, but I'm also looking at your windows in case you don't know the hand raising feature on here. Could happen. Okay, so see no other comments on A. Are we going to B? We're combining those. Is that, did I get that correct? Leaving it to the, okay. Right. So now moving on to C, formal observations. Suspend the number of formal observations, 6 per semester for a quarter, or let the program decide. Commissioner Grenoshirer?
Again, I would defer to the judgment of our colleagues to let the programs decide, would be my recommendation.
Commissioner Kuhn?
I also agree to that each place decide what is best for the teacher candidate.
Thank you. Commissioner Sloan?
I just want to reiterate that in this moment that we have these requirements in our standards for reasons. They're guidance to the field in terms of the kinds of expectations programs should have for the kinds of supports that they give their candidates in student teaching. These now need to be adapted in our current situation, but they still speak to sort of the three primary reasons why we have supervised supports. One of them is to ensure that our TK-12 students are receiving good instruction while they have a student teacher in the classroom. The second one is to provide supports for the student teachers to learn their craft in the context of enacting it. And then the third is to provide programs with data on clinical practice and how their candidates are doing. In this situation, supervision can still do all of those things. It's just not going to be quite as specified as it is under quote unquote, normal quote unquote circumstances. So I just want to be sure that we have had lots of communications with the fields, and our education and preparation partners do understand and do certainly know the purpose of supervised observations. And I just want to be sure that everyone understands that we know that too.
Okay. Are there any other comments, commissioners? All right, so there are no comments on this. And do we have enough information, Terry, to move forward with this one? It appears that the majority of us believe that this should be at the discretion of the programs. Yes, okay. So moving on to D, solo teaching. Eliminate 4-week solo teaching, let program decide. Commissioner Brown?
Are we considering these three issues together, the clinical practice, the formal observations, and solo teaching, or are we just generally going through individually? Because I'm confused.
So we're breaking each of these down to make sure that, like the discussion on these items is specific to this particular point, so that we can move on and talk about the next one. So while it's one item, Commissioner Brown, right, when we vote, it'll be that we're voting on one item, but these are all of the points within that item. So if we need to make a modification to any one of these points, staff wants to know so that they, what our recommendation is going to look like. Did that help?
A little, not enough for me, but a little. There's so many of them here that I'm wondering, should I wait until you finish and then ask then ask for clarification, or should I do it now?
Well, are you talking about solo teaching?
No, I'm talking about that 600 hours of clinical practice. I got confused between the two parts of A and the two parts of B.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and make a comment on that?
I can't make a comment because I'm confused. So I was just asking for if this was going to be clarified at the end, or if you can clarify it now. What did commissioners say? I got lost in the text.
Okay,
so Madam Chair, can I
yes,
make a suggestion, Madam Chair? I think Terry Clark was about to try to summarize what she thought she heard emerging from the discussion of A and B. Perhaps that would be helpful to see if she caught, to check for understanding of, are we hearing you correctly? And then set that kind of on the board, waiting for a motion at the end of all of them. But let's make sure we have clarity about the direction that we're hearing from commissioners about A and B. Is that permissible for Terry Clark to share what she thought she heard?
Thank you.
So
I
thought I heard both Commissioner Sloan and Commissioner Grinnell-Shire say that looking at A and B together, giving as much flexibility to programs as possible. So the programs could make the decision with the guidance to programs that if the candidate has passed the TPA, that not necessarily as many hours would be necessary. Did that encompass what you shared, Commissioner Sloan? So I've written down that the A-B recommendation now is that programs would be able to make the decision about the 600 hours with the additional guidance that programs should recognize if a candidate has passed the TPA, that they should be even more lenient with the number of hours. Again, the candidate does need to demonstrate the knowledge and skills, and if there's been a modification, it needs to be documented on the individual development plan that goes over to the induction program. And then in C, I also heard let the program make the decision.
Yes. Commissioner Brown?
Okay, now I understand. Thank you.
Sorry about the confusion. So we're on solo teaching. Eliminate 4 weeks solo teaching, let program decide. Commissioners? Commissioner Sloan?
One of the things that we've heard consistently in our comments this morning are some of the ways in the very beginning of this crisis that people have been trying to bend over backwards to meet some requirements that don't make sense in the current situations that they are teaching and working in. And I think the solo teaching requirement is one of those places. The last thing we want is something that isn't authentic and actually helps somebody learn to teach. So that's one comment I have. The second comment is that I believe most of our teacher candidates across the state are currently still working with students, and they're still working with cooperating teachers. And now that we have approved the variable term waiver, they are going to have a chance to go into a teaching position where they will be supported in induction. And at this moment in time, I think what we want to do is let our teacher candidates focus on their work this spring with their students, knowing that when they go into the fall, they're going to be supported in their work when they are doing their solo teaching.
Yes, I concur. Any other comments, commissioners? So we'll let the programs decide.
And Chair Rodriguez, I also heard Commissioner Sloan talk about reminding the programs again the purposes of the solo teaching, of the clinical practice, that we're ensuring that TK-12 students are having good instruction, candidates are getting feedback, and programs have feedback. So if we summarize, let the program decide with this additional information to guide the program's decision.
Okay. Commissioner Sloan?
Thank you. And then thank you for clarifying that, Terry. And then to make one more sort of push here, that each of our teacher candidates this spring and we're talking right now about general ed in number 1, multiple and single subject candidates are having different experiences this spring as a result of what's happened. It's important that programs are working with each of our candidates to develop a very detailed individual development learning plan. I always get mixed up on the IDL and the other as they go into the fall, so that mentors and others, and they themselves also know, where are the places that I should be focusing on in growth in my first year of teaching.
Commissioner Alavi?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that every school district, there's such a wide varying of teaching abilities that is going on within our school districts, and that the teaching programs are having to balance, that we have to leave this up to the programs themselves. They're dealing with districts that could be, some are very far along this technology spectrum, and some haven't even begun. Unless you leave this up to the programs, there'll be no way to monitor it at all.
Thank you. Any other comments on the solo teaching? Okay, we'll move on to allow programs to determine if range of settings and range of grade levels. Ed specialist, settings and grade levels. Commissioner Greneau-Shire?
Again, I would defer to the professional judgment of our colleagues, and with the assurance that a description of what the candidate needs to do in the fall would be included in the individual development plan. That gives me confidence that our ed specialist candidates would have those range of experiences. So again, deferring to the programs.
Any other comments on this one? Did you want to say something else, Commissioner Greneau-Shire, on this? Okay, so leaving it to the programs. Moving on, the item F, preliminary teaching, waive precondition to allow student teaching before meeting subject matter.
Commissioner Wall, I think, has his hand up.
Oh, okay. All right. Commissioner Wall? Sorry, I was looking over here on for the little digital hands.
I just think that this is particularly important given the evolving situation. We're doing scenario planning, right, for different dynamics of what might happen. And this allows additional flexibility. And if our theme is flexibility, I just think that this relieves a tremendous stress. I can tell you that in the last few days, I probably have fielded a dozen specific queries about this that reach the dean level about what's going to happen. And I think that additional flexibility will be extremely valuable.
Commissioner Hind?
Sorry, I was gone for a little bit. I'm back, but I think that it's important too. So if we allow this, I think it's a good idea. And you can't take a test that's not being offered. But if you're in a program and you're 5 months into your program and you can't pass the test, you're going to be upset. So thinking that through, what are the unintended consequences of starting a program, paying for a program, and then not being able to pass the test? So I just want to throw that out to think about.
Commissioner Sloan reminded us a little bit earlier, there actually is a bill that the commission is working with the legislature to sponsor to give more flexibility for the subject matter requirement. That bill, you're going to hear more about it tomorrow again, but it would allow a candidate to mix and match some coursework with subtests. And so if a candidate, for example, was not able to pass multiple subject subtest 2, but they could show that they've done a course in math and a course in science content, it would allow additional flexibility. So I think you've raised a very important point, because candidates can get into a program, and if they don't meet this barrier before they start, that barrier does still appear later in the program. But you as a body are working on having additional flexibilities for candidate to meet that requirement.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Any other comments? Commissioner Sloan?
Probably don't need to comment, but my heart went out to one of our stakeholders who commented on the number of times that she has tried to pass this last CSET. And so I hope that she is listening and hears that her request that there be courses that fulfill the CSET in some way is coming. We know that people demonstrate their understanding in different ways. And if we can offer those ways within different ways within the commission, then we're doing good practice.
Thank you. Okay, so was there a feel for this particular item about waiving the precondition to allow student teaching before meeting the subject matter? Yes? Okay. All right. Let's see here. So moving on to G, induction. Define the 2019-2020 year as a year. No candidate who has participated needs to extend induction into 2020-21. Thoughts, questions, comments? Commissioner Hind?
Sorry, I meant to raise with my digital hand, but so it's so funny. I mean, I agree that, you know, we should count it, but induction should be a positive experience. It should be, you know, mentoring should be the key point, and we should, candidates and you know, new teachers should want to have that experience where they have a mentor teacher who's there. So the way I read it, it's almost like it's induction's a punishment. Like, oh, you get off, you don't have to do it, you know, but it shouldn't be. I really want to go back to when we talked about induction, you know, years ago, that mentoring is the most important piece. So I could totally see us saying, you don't have to do more portfolio work, or you don't have to do more paper pencil work, but we want to offer you that mentor teacher for another year if you need it or you want it, or 6 more months.
Ms. Clark?
I think the reason the programs were so specific about asking for this is not that the candidate didn't necessarily want additional support, but the programs were concerned that they would not have enough mentors or coaches next year. Because if people stay in induction for a 3rd year and there's a new incoming cohort year 1, they would need significantly more mentors and coaches. So I don't think it's, and you have a couple letters on this recommendation in your letter packet, where I think the program was just saying these specific candidates are still doing induction and they shouldn't be held up from getting their clear credential. I don't think it was that induction was seen as too onerous in those letters, at least.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think it was the mentorship issue. Commissioner Hind?
Just to follow up, then I support that definitely. But I think that, you know, I would hope, I know it's going to be a weird year next year, but I would hope that, you know, schools, principals would find supports for those new teachers, especially since they were shorted a couple of months of mentoring. So.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Commissioner de la Torre Escobedo?
Yeah, and just to add to that, Commissioner Hind, I would also add that, and I can only speak for the induction program that I'm involved in with Butte County Office of Education, but that's not how it's being communicated at all as well, just in terms of, you know, this overall burden and whatnot. And I also want to add just in terms of the role of mentors, and I know it's been said before, but just how much mentors are doing right now. I just want to give a shout out to them as well, because I know I'll have my mentee observing me on Zoom next week. So.
Let's see. I don't see any digital hands, so I'm just going through. No. Commissioner Hartwig, was that just, I saw like a little gesture, no? Okay. All right, just checking in. So, feel good about this item? Yes, okay. We'll move on to induction precondition. waive precondition that candidate enrolling hold a preliminary will allow VTW to begin induction. Commissioner Simmons. So weird calling you that, Commissioner Simmons.
I have a question for Terry. If that precondition is waived, would it allow an intern credential holder to enter induction? Would it allow a STIP or a PIP to enter induction?
Not as the recommendation is currently framed. The recommendation right now says to waive the requirement that they hold a preliminary and allow a person on a VTW to begin. If you wanted to allow interns that are also only finishing up their TPA or something, you could instead have the recommendation be to waive the precondition that a candidate enrolling in induction must hold a preliminary credential and allow candidates who are finishing up their final performance assessment while holding a VTW or an intern credential to enroll in induction.
Can I ask one more question about that, Terry?
Yes, go ahead.
Would there be any benefit to that, or would a candidate have access to an early completion option anyway?
An intern candidate or an induction candidate?
And someone who was both. Or if you were an intern, a lot of the people who were on the stakeholders were concerned that intern credential holders were going to be required to do an extension rather than get the variable term waiver. I can't identify any benefit to having a variable term waiver over having a internship, except perhaps that they could start induction.
If the candidate is an intern and already has a relationship with their intern program and could just finish up their performance assessment October, November, December, and then get their preliminary, that could definitely work that way.
Commissioner Simmons, did you have another question, or you?
I think that the way I can't see a way that it is, the way it's written, I think, is to the best benefit for candidates.
Okay.
Can I just interject, commissioners? I heard a question raised about PIPs and STIPs, and they have not been contemplated or analyzed as potentially part of these recommendations. So I would ask that we not try to incorporate them in prior to staff having the opportunity to do a deeper analysis. So if we can keep PIPs and STIPs in their lane, that would be helpful.
Okay. Commissioner Hind?
I have a question. So as it stands right now, if you are an intern, you're not doing induction at all until you get your credential? Is that how it works right now?
When we talk about induction, we're talking about a commission-approved induction program that takes you from your preliminary credential to your clear. Every employer that has an intern or a person on a PIP or a STIP, every employer should be supporting all their employees. And so many employers have a very layered approach to this, where all new employees get certain things. People on an intern document are getting certain things. In addition, people on a preliminary are participating in induction. Many of the times the same mentors or coaches are working with candidates who are in a lot of these different places. But if you talk about induction as the commission-approved program that moves you from a preliminary credential to a clear credential, intern candidates are actually not in that program.
So essentially an intern could be teaching a full year and have no induction and have to do another 2 years of induction?
That's often where the induction early completion option comes in. Every induction program is required by law to have an early completion option, and candidates who are experienced and exemplary teachers need to be able to take advantage of that early completion option.
So that's last follow-up question. So would it be to the benefit of our interns right now? Do they want to be included in this part of this item? Do they want to, I don't know, do they want that, or is that too much?
Commissioner or Executive Director Sandy, should we table the intern for because you just said to separate that, right? That this isn't.
No, I didn't say to separate the intern. I did, when Commissioner Simmons began his question a few moments ago, he talked about PIP and STIP holders, which is a permit. That's a different category of thing than interns. I'm not suggesting that interns not be contemplated here. If we're moving toward a solution that provides flexibility without requiring or mandating a particular approach, and if it's within our scope to make that determination, then I say it's on the table.
The rationale behind recommendation H is that if these former candidates, now our employees, are working in the schools, whether they're teachers or administrators, and as Chair Sloan mentioned, they have missed out on some key components of their preliminary preparation program, we want to ensure they have support. So we did not want induction programs saying, nope, you can't come in this program, you can't have support here because you're still on a variable term waiver. You still don't have your preliminary credential. There is a plan, and a couple of the speakers mentioned this, but there is a detailed plan we're working on. We're working closely with Amy Rising's performance assessment staff, where mentors and coaches in induction, there would be an online webinar where if they have a candidate who needs to finish a performance assessment, it would explain to that mentor coach the appropriate roles and what they should not be doing, and give them guidance. The candidates who still need to do those things could have office hours or an email contact available. We're actually asking that their preliminary programs still keep in touch with them. It might be through an online professional learning community. So what we're trying to do in item H is say, if these individuals who've had some shortage of their preparation this year begin practice as educators, how can we support them to both be effective in their new role and to complete their credential requirements and to be inducted fully into the profession? So it's trying to do three things all at once. So in many ways, an intern who is very close to the end of the program and only has a performance assessment left makes a lot of sense to be included with these variable term waiver people who are at the end of their program and only have a performance assessment left.
Okay. Commissioner Hind, is that what you were alluding to? All right, excellent. So would we need to include interns just to be specific so that there isn't, there aren't any questions? Do we need to do that?
I wrote down to broaden it to the definition of they don't have to hold a preliminary. They instead need to be near the end of their preliminary program with only having a performance assessment type requirement left.
Okay. Commissioner Simmons and then Commissioner Sloan.
I feel like my poor question got us down a rabbit trail. The point that I was inarticulately trying to make was that we're not really suspending that entire precondition. What we're essentially doing is rewriting it and expanding it to allow for variable term waiver holders and now potentially interns to be part of the induction program.
I understand, Commissioner Simmons. You're saying we're not waiving it, we are amending it. So you must hold a preliminary credential or be near the end of your preliminary program and hold either a VTW or an intern document with just your performance assessment left. You don't want it opened up to people on PIPs or STIPs or other short-term documents. Accurate? I got it finally. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Sloan?
Thank you, Terry. I'm glad you got it. And I'm glad you and David explained it to all of us, because I think we get it now. And that was very important. I just wanted to speak to a couple of people's requests and other conversations that we have had to ensure that induction mentors have the supports they need to support people coming into induction who are on variable term waivers. And I want to let the field know that commission staff and me and others have had conversations with people, induction mentors and others, and our higher education partners to understand what it is that candidates might need when they're on a variable term waiver in the fall. And I also want to remind everyone that this cohort is a little different. They're not going in blind. If they are doing the teaching performance assessment or the APA, now I can speak to the TPA better than the APA because I know classrooms better than I know administrators work. So let me just talk to the TPA for a moment. The TPA, all of our candidates who are in programs at this moment should be getting some knowledge from their program providers about what the TPA is, what the tasks are, what the rubrics are, the kinds of expectations they are. They are essentially a slice and time of teaching. They are ways to demonstrate authentic tasks of teaching, planning, instruction, assessment, analysis, reflection. They are the kinds of things that mentors do with teachers in their first years of teaching. And what I mean by do with them in my conversations with induction people over the years and with people who support candidates with the TPA, what they need from their mentors and their cooperating teachers, for instance, is a thinking partner in part for what it is that they are planning, just like you would when you were providing them with supports on planning, who their students are in the classroom, how you differentiate for them, how you ensure you're adapting and modifying instruction for all students with special needs. Those kinds of things are the kinds of things, the conversations that you would have with your mentor or cooperating teacher. You might help, a mentor might help with some of the, who knows, videoing. And then there are peers who can help. You can help each other. There are specific supports that mentors and higher ed faculty can provide. And those are outlined in all of our documentation. Now, Amy Rising at the Commission and people who work on EdTPA, there are all sorts of guidelines for the kinds of supports that we can provide candidates. There's already lots of examples of online supports for people doing TPAs and APAs. Then there are the in-classroom kinds of supports. And then we also have the example of intern teachers who have been doing the performance assessment while teachers of record for a long time now. So we have lots of examples out there of people doing this. And we have a commission staff who is very dedicated to creating the kinds of supports that are needed. And we have induction mentors who are extremely dedicated to wanting to do their work well. And I want you all to know that we are listening to your needs and we are continuing to figure out how we can support you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other comments on this one? Feel like we're ready to move on? Okay, so let's see.
The next two are a little bit complex, Commissioner Rodriguez. Could I help you with these?
Absolutely.
The next two apply to the 3 pupil personnel services programs as well as the speech language pathology. And it's a 2-part, and it's definitely an and. It's to endorse the national association's flexibilities that they identified, and to have the programs make the determinations, have candidates met the expectations. The caveat is we still have specific, and we will be very clear during the webinar we hold with these programs, there are specific hour requirements in regulations that are not being waived by this action because those requirements are in regulation. But the action here is to endorse the National Association's flexibilities and allow programs to make the determination of when a candidate has met requirements.
Commissioners, any comments or questions on that? And so we don't have any say on the hours, but to give them flexibility otherwise, correct? Commissioner Brown?
This isn't a question or a comment, but Terry, thank you very much. I think you wrote this, you and your staff wrote this really well. And as someone that works regularly with career tech education programs that are connected with industry, I think this is a really good idea to keep in good connection with those national associations. So I appreciate this one.
Okay, I don't see any digital hands. I'm just going to scroll and see if anybody has their actual hand raised. Any other comments, commissioners, before we move on? Okay, so moving on to K. APA passing standard, postpone standard setting until spring 2021 and extend current passing standard for the 2020-21 year. Is there anything else that you wanted to say on this, Terry?
Nope, that's pretty much the recommendation, and that's what staff suggests, and I think I heard some support from the field too.
Yes. Commissioners, any comments, questions? Checking for hands, digital hands. No. Okay, so this has been quite a discussion, and this is an action item. Is there, and once a motion is made and seconded, we can have further discussion if you feel there's something else that you'd like to say. So do I have a motion to accept the proposed modifications and flexibility approaches to the Educator preparation program and credential requirements?
Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion. Oh. Commissioner Marks? Is there a second? Commissioner Martinez. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and we're going to vote by roll call. So
could I help maybe by walking us through the motion, just to see if you're agreeing, Commissioner Marks and Barnes, that this is accurate? That for the first recommendation on the 600 hours, programs will be making the determination with the guidance to programs to remember the purposes of clinical practice and to remember that if a candidate has passed a TPA, they may need even fewer hours, but programs are making the decision. For formal observations, the programs will make that determination. For solo teaching, the programs again will be making that determination. For the Ed Specialist, programs will decide about the settings and grade levels. And for all 5 of these, it's going to be documented in the individual development plan that goes from the preliminary program to the induction program. For the preliminary teaching, the precondition about meeting subject matter, you said yes, you will waive it for the candidates in the fall. You said yes, that both for teachers and administrators, the 2019-2020 year is a year of participation. And that yes, individuals who are near the end of their preliminary program and employed as educators may participate in induction. That yes, the professional association's guidance for pupil personnel services and speech language pathology programs should be considered by institutions, and the program should make the decision that the candidate has met the expectations as long as they meet the Title V hourly requirements. And the APA passing standard would be postponed till spring of 21, and the current passing standard will stand for the 2021 year.
I'm seeing you nodding your head, Commissioner Marks. So is that, you agree with that motion? Okay. And Commissioner Martinez with the second on that motion? All right, excellent. So we have a motion and a second. And before we call to a vote, we can have a discussion on it. And Commissioner Sloan, I see your hand up. Okay, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. One last thing with regards to the adaptations that we are potentially providing for programs, and the push again to remind programs that we would like you to document what it is that you are doing, not just because we have to be sure in our accreditation processes, but because you might be making some really important adaptations that the field can learn from. And we are probably not going to go back to learn a new normal, and we don't know it is going to be happening. And so everything that you are learning about our work at this point in time will help us. So please make sure you're documenting well.
Thank you. Commissioner Hind?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something not super positive, but we're doing a lot to be flexible for all the candidates to be successful. There's a couple things that we need to remember. Not all programs are created equal. Some are going to provide better teacher preparation than others, and not all candidates are ready to be in the classroom. So just because somebody's heart is in being a teacher doesn't necessarily mean that they should be a teacher. So I think just something to keep in mind as we are being very flexible and understanding. And of course, we want more teachers in the classrooms, but we want good teachers in the classrooms. And so just to be aware that while we are being flexible and we're making things work, that we need to just because you can get there doesn't mean you should be there. So just keep that in mind. And I know everyone today a lot of people were saying, let's waive this, let's get rid of that test, let's get rid of this test. But the reality is we've put a lot of the time and effort into creating these tests and these different ways to show that you're ready to be in the classroom. And so I think we need to respect that and hold the integrity of our profession. I think that's really important. So I'll do the downer, but I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Commissioner Hind. Are there any other comments before we call for a vote? Any other comments, commissioners? Commissioner Sloan?
I just want to thank you, Commissioner Hind, for saying that, because our responsibility is, as I had said, also in the beginning, it is to our new educators, but it is to our students. And we have to be sure that we are providing our students with the best teachers that they can have, and then providing those teachers with the supports that they need in this time of crisis. So we can never forget that it is about our K-12 and P-12 students that are ultimately who we have to keep in our hearts and minds as well.
Any other comments, Commissioner?
Commissioner Wall has his hand up.
Okay, so he's not in my window. Where are you, Commissioner Wall? Thank you.
I actually want to echo this. There was a survey yesterday on Inside Higher Education that talked about faculty responses to teaching online. and one of them was prominently to reduce rigor. And I think that flexibility is absolutely essential, but since we have such a broad audience, I think this challenge that Commissioner Hein has indicated is super important. We know that faculty and programs need the flexibility. I see it every day, but I want to. I think we have to counterbalance that with exactly what was articulated, and I think we need to make sure we revisit this right as we go along, and how long flexibility is needed and how that evolves. Because I just think it's the point is super important.
Absolutely, Commissioner Brown.
I so miss next to Andrew because now I get to respectfully add an alternative viewpoint, which we always do, Andrew, which is that's an interesting article. And my experience with all of our faculty in the district of my community college is not at all about reducing rigor, but is about recognizing the complex work that it takes to address the whole student and the whole learner when you're not even sitting in the room with them. And so we're really looking at other items such as how the idea of online learning is so misunderstood that often things like for colleges, class sizes are increased at the very time when you need to spend more time connecting with your learners. So I miss you, Andrew, but I had to throw it in anyway. That's an alternative viewpoint.
Thank you. And yes, right, the TPA and the reflective teaching is something that can be transported into online. It takes reflection and it takes time, but we do want to make sure that this is not considered a permanent change and a pass, because what we want is to make sure that our teachers are ready to go into the classroom and have the habits of mind of continuous reflection and continuous improvement, which is what I'm going through right now, and a lot of my colleagues are as well. That we're thinking like, how do I know that my student knows this, right? Or how can I make sure that my students' needs are being met, and teach them the content they need so that they can move on. So we're still asking the questions, just in a different setting. And great points made by everybody. And as I said when I gave my liaison report, I have all of the trust that the COA in the accreditation process is going to be vigilant and arduous about reading the reports that the colleges and universities that we just and teacher preparation programs that we gave the opportunity for them to have some flexibility with this, that they will show us what they're doing, and and that is part of their accreditation. And so I really have a lot of faith in the staff at COA and the committee members. So that said, let's call for a roll call vote.
Kathleen Alavi.
I vote aye.
Kirsten Barnes.
Aye.
C. Michael Cooney.
Aye.
Marisol de la Torre Escobedo.
Aye.
Johanna Harwick.
Aye.
Alicia Hine.
Aye.
Terry Jackson.
Aye.
Bonnie Clapp.
Aye.
Kevin Quinn.
Aye.
Jane Marks.
Aye.
Cynthia Martin. Monica Martinez.
Aye.
Ade Rodriguez.
Aye.
David Simmons,
Aye.
Tina Sloan.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Let's see, it's 1:10. Chair Sloan, should we continue with item 4B?
No, actually, I think we will move item 4B to general session tomorrow and go.
Okay.
So I will now recess the general session. As I mentioned, we will move 4B to tomorrow. Members of the commission will go into closed session after we have a break for lunch.